Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I want to show you guys a complete tutorial for Open Broadcaster software, trying to begin you from the start of installing the program all the way to where you can record or stream videos for either YouTube or Twitch TV. So if you don't already know, Open Broadcaster software is a tool for being able to record different video sources straight from your computer, which can include things like your computer screen monitor, the window of a game or web browser. It can include overlays, and if you use programs like Twitch Alerts, you can also set up alerts to pop up on screen while you're playing or streaming a game. Now, although most people probably are going to use Open Broadcaster software for recording video games, it's also really good for doing screencasts. And there's nothing stopping you from using it for doing vlogs either, since it is compatible with webcams or external cameras as long as you can get it hooked up to your PC. So to get started, one of the most basic things you're going to need to set up is a scene. So in the bottom left-hand corner of the program, we see our list of scenes. You can see I have a few set up and I can actually go between them. You'll notice that these other scenes are recording what's on my screen, and yes, if OBS gets caught there, you're going to get that infinite loop. So how you make something actually pop up inside of a scene is that you add sources to your scene. So the scene is the entirety of what you're recording inside of OBS, but the sources are individual components, whether that's an image or a video source or something from your computer that you want to show on screen while you're recording your footage. So if we go over here to the sources area, we can right click or hit the plus sign in order to add a new source in. You can see that there's a whole bunch of options here, including display capture when you want to show an entire monitor on screen, game capture for when you want to show a full screen application or a specific game title, image for when you want to show a simple JPEG or PNG image on the screen. It could be good for overlays, particularly if you're going to do PNGs, since those can be transparent and let you have the game hide behind the overlay. You can also add in a video capture device. That would be where you would choose a webcam. And window capture for miscellaneous windows on your computer. So that would be web browsers, or you could add an OBS window itself, or maybe Notepad++. Things like that which aren't games, or if they are games, you're probably using a window capture specifically because the game capture isn't working. So let's create a brand new scene by hitting the add button for scenes. We can also do that by right click and then left click on add. And we're going to call this complete tutorial scene. So for this complete tutorial scene, let's get started by adding in an image. It's something really simple. So I'm going to add in an image here. So you can see that you can create new or add existing. This is pretty consistent across all the different sources you may want to add in, because if you have a source in another scene, it's easy to incorporate them into your new scene by just adding the source that exists in another scene. But for right now, we don't have any, so I'm going to just call this a new image, test image, and you can locate an image file from your computer. So for me, I'm just going to go over to this list of logos I have, and let's choose the OBS logo. So when we pop that in, you'll see that it shows the bounds of that image with the red lines. We can left click on any of these bounds and stretch it if we wish. And if you hold shift down while you're clicking on one of the stretching points, you can actually stretch the X and Y axes without them being in equal ratio. Without that, they will always stretch at the normal ratio for the image. If you hold Alt down while you click on one side, you can actually drag one side in if you want to hide part of that image. So when you don't have the entire image showing, it'll turn into a green line representing that you've actually cropped part of that side off, and you can crop as many sides as you want individually if for some reason you only want to show part of your image on screen. And of course you can drag it right back out if you want to undo the cropping. So with this properties for test image window, I'm just going to hit OK, and we can just position this wherever we want it. So I'm actually going to shrink this image in ratio and just put it in the bottom right hand corner. And now we can add in another source. So I'm going to right click, go to add, and let's do a game capture source. So for the source name, I'm going to call it Stardew Valley, and this is intentionally going to throw an error. As we'll see when we hit OK, it'll say that the name's already in use. So I don't actually have another game capture called Stardew Valley. So for the name for this game capture, I'm going to call it Stardew Valley and hit OK. So what's going to happen here is it's going to error out because we've already used the name Stardew Valley somewhere else. So even if you don't have a source named Stardew Valley in one of your other scenes, if a scene name itself has the same name, as you can see over here in my scenes list, I have one called Stardew Valley, it's going to conflict. So just something to be aware of. You have to use separate names for everything between your scenes and sources. So I could just put a 2 here, or maybe we call this game capture, underscore game capture, and hit OK. So by default, when you have the properties for a game capture, it's going to show mode capture any full screen application, which probably works for a lot of cases, but you may end up getting the wrong application recording in there if you tend to alt tab between a bunch of applications while you're recording. So what I actually prefer is to click on the mode and go to specific window. And then you can click on this drop down and you can choose from the windows which are currently open on your computer. Now, if you don't see your game and your game is open, you might need to do a window capture instead of a game capture. Worst case, you can use a display capture and capture your entire screen, and as long as the game's full screen, that would work as well. But the reason that Stardew Valley isn't showing up in this list is because I don't actually have the game open. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up my copy of Stardew Valley, and then we'll be able to select that window. Okay, so we can see now my Stardew Valley game is full screened, and I should be able to go ahead and select it in the properties now. I might need to redo it because it populates the list here when you first add the source. So I'm going to actually double click, go back into this source and do capture specific window. And now that Stardew Valley is there, we can go ahead and hit OK. Now, if you add your source and you still don't see it showing up on screen, you might need to change the settings inside of the game. So like with any game, you just go into the options menu and you're going to want to make sure it's full screen. If full screen doesn't work, you can try making it windowed mode and adding it in as a window capture instead. So I'll try that, Stardew Valley window capture. I think Stardew Valley specifically is just one of those games that doesn't always cooperate so well. So we can do the window capture here for Stardew Valley, and that's pretty much fine. You will see here that at the bottom, because the Stardew Valley window is not 100% of the height of my screen, and my screen is 180p resolution, that what actually happens is that the ratio of the game is not ideal. So we could stretch that by holding shift down and stretching that down here as one possible fix, if you're okay with that. So if for a specific game, the window capture isn't working for you and the game capture isn't working for you, then you can try with display capture. Once again, display capture will capture everything that's happening on screen. So if you open up your game while it's recording, then that's going to be captured. Not ideal for streaming since you may not want to show your desktop while you're doing that, but those are essentially your 3 options. So let's just give one more example here of adding in a video source. If you want to add in a webcam that is hooked up to your computer, has been installed already, all that jazz, then you can right click and go to video capture device. So video capture device here. You should see your list of webcams show up. So if you have multiple, you can select from the drop down list and choose whichever webcam you have there. That's just my laptop webcam. And you can do things like configure the resolution. If you see device default here, you can go to custom and you can set up specific details. So like if you want it to be 720p resolution, you can just type that in as the custom resolution. But you could also make it smaller if you want to as well. Note that you don't have to make it low resolution. Another alternative would be to just use the full resolution, but then scale it down. So once again, if we click on the borders of our source, we can make it a lot smaller in one corner, and we could bring it back there. Now, it's possible to add in filters for both your audio and your video inside of OBS. So imagine that I had a green screen behind me right here. We could right-click on our video capture device, go to filters, and then we'd be able to add in an effect filter here. So for instance, if you want to remove a green screen, then I believe what you want here is chroma key. So chroma key allows you to select a color, generally green, from your background and filter that out. So I'm going to try to select the gray of the ceiling. So I'm going to use pick screen color here. Click on that, hit OK. And as you can see, it filtered everything out because gray is not a good color to use for that. So I'll turn down the similarity. Let's see, the color spill reduction. And you could kind of mess around with the setting. The reason why people use green screens, though, is because green is not really something that you would see in a room. It's not a color people wear, and it doesn't really show up on anyone's body. So it's a good color to filter out in the background when you want there to be some image or a game behind you, rather than them just seeing your room. So yeah, anyway, not really going to get into it in too much detail right there, but that would be the general idea of how you do that. And as you can see, there's other effects you can play around with here as well. Color key is basically the same as chroma key, so if you don't have good experiences with chroma key, but you're trying to filter out that background, you could give color key a shot. And for audio video filters, we have things like a compressor when you want to make the audio levels of your microphone more equal. A gain when you want to raise the volume of your microphone. Noise gate if you want the microphone to lock itself when you're not talking. Noise suppression when you want to remove some background noise, and you can also add in VST audio plugins such as Reaper filters if you look into that later. And FYI, if you have a bunch of sources in your scene but you don't want to actually show them all on screen at the same time, you can always click one of these eyeballs here, and that will hide it if the eyeball is not open. You can also lock the sources so you can't make any changes to it by clicking on the lock. So let's say that you wanted to add in noise suppression as an audio filter on your microphone. Well, where we see mic aux here, we can left click on the settings gear and go to filters. Well, from there you can already see I have a whole bunch of filters added in here. It's the same process for adding in a video filter as an audio filter. So you would just add in the one you want from over here. You can see that I have Reaper plugins installed on my computer. Not currently using that. But if you want to take a look at my current settings, I have the compressor added in with defaults. I believe the noise gate also with defaults. Raising and lowering the open and close threshold will control when the microphone shuts off and when it opens up again. And then noise suppression, I usually put that at -60 dB to filter out as much background noise as I can. So it can be a good idea to play around with those, particularly if your environment is a little noisy or your microphone levels are a bit inconsistent. Okay, so let's talk about how you can set up a streaming alert system in OBS. So Twitch alerts is a really common way to do that. So I'm going to go over to Twitch alerts. So the link I'm going to want to go to here is streamlabs.com/dashboard. Okay, so with this site, we're going to want to add a widget to our video stream. So let's start with something really simple and do an alert box. So with the alert box, you can have events show up on screen like when someone donates to your Twitch stream. So you can of course customize exactly how it's going to look by going down here and changing your settings around. What we're really adding to OBS is a browser source, which is a URL that's going to contain these settings. So here I have Mordekaiser from League of Legends. And you can have animated GIFs play whenever someone does something like follows or donates. But how you actually connect it to OBS is that you would click over here to show the widget URL. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to copy that over to OBS. So inside of OBS, we want to add in a new source, and this is going to be a browser source. So I can call this event alerts, and maybe in parentheses I put in browser to make it known that it's a browser source. You can see that by default it's linking to obsproject.com, but what we actually want to put in here is the URL that we copied over from Streamlabs. So I'm going to paste that in here. So note that you can also customize the width and height here. If you know CSS rules for displaying web content, you can add those in here as well. But mostly what we just need to do is post in the URL and hit OK. So that's what I'm going to do here. And now we have this browser source. So it doesn't show anything by default because it only triggers when something happens on our Twitch stream. So I'm going to click here. And you can see on the Streamlabs page that there are these test buttons. So if we click one of these, we should be able to see what's going to occur on the stream when those real events happen before we actually launch it. So I'm going to do test follow here. And we can see it launching here. Test follow goes there. I think I have a sound effect associated with that too. You can also do test subscription, test donation, so on and so forth.
This is a test donation for $1.
Then when it comes to the rest of the widgets, which you can of course see on the left side of the page here, it's the same idea. You click to show the widget URL, you add it as a browser source, and that should load up inside of your OBS scene that you're going to be recording or streaming from. So let's talk about settings in OBS and how you can set things up in order to stream. So we're going to go to the file menu, or actually, before we go to the file menu, let's create a new profile. So a profile is going to be a specific loadout of settings that we have over in the file settings menu that we can use to record or stream whatever we want with OBS. So if you want one profile where it records in, let's say, 1080p resolution, you might have another profile where it records in 720p resolution, or you might have one that does it in 60 FPS. So if you want to distinguish those, then you can create new profiles here. You can also duplicate old ones if you want it to be exactly the same, but you only want to change one setting. But because I kind of want to go through the settings with you, let's just start a new profile. So this is going to be the complete tutorial profile, why not? And I'll hit enter there. You can see that it's selected by default. And now we can go over to file settings. So if you ever wanted to change OBS to have a dark or a light theme, here is where you will do that. I pretty much always use the dark theme because it's easier on my eyes. The stream tab is where you can add in your stream key. We'll talk about getting that in a minute. In output, you can have simple video mode output or advanced output. So we can use one here from speedtest.net. That one is pretty solid. So we'll just go here, click on the go button, and it's going to connect our computer to a server and see how fast the connection goes. So what really matters here is the upload speed, because when you are streaming to a service like Twitch or YouTube, it's obviously going to be using your internet. So it's going to be restricted by how fast your internet connection can upload. Now I'm doing this behind a VPN, so at the moment the speeds are going to be really, really slow. Okay, so in this hypothetical example, I have an upload max bitrate of 7.82 megabits per second. If you check the YouTube documentation for recommended upload encoding settings, you can get a good idea of where your bitrate should be at for your videos if you want them to look good. Because if you have a very high resolution for your video, but you have a low bitrate, it may start to look choppy. Now, generally, I would also say that you shouldn't set the bitrate to your absolute maximum for your internet, because if you do that and the internet ever dips, you may run into some issues. So it might be more consistent to set it at about 70 or 80% of this value. So instead of setting it at 8 megabits per second, I might set it at 6. So we can see over here for this recommended bitrate for standard uploads that it will say for 30 FPS, you can see the frame rate up here, and 180p, it recommends having at least 8 megabits per second. We can also see for 720p, 5 megabits per second is enough, but if you go up to a higher frame rate like 60 FPS, these numbers jump up about 50%. So 180p at 60 FPS, you'd want a bitrate of 12 megabits per second or so. Now, if I was to put that into OBS and using a VPN connection, which gives me these low numbers, I would probably run into some issues and people would complain that the stream doesn't look good. So if you actually try to stream, there'll be a little icon in the bottom right hand corner which will actually show the stream health. So if a lot of frames are dropping or the bitrate is just too low for it to look good on the other side, the green light that shows up over here may turn yellow or red. So keep an eye on that the first few times you're setting up your stream. So let's say hypothetically I wanted to record at 180p 30 FPS. So we'll do 8 megabits per second. How we convert that into the video bitrate is that we multiply that by 1,000. So 8 becomes 1,000. That's how you convert megabits into kilobits. Audio bitrate, I like to set that at 192, doesn't make a huge difference, but you can pretty much figure out if the audio bitrate is 192 and the video bitrate is 8,000, then the video is still taking up 40 times more data than the audio. So increasing your audio bitrate to increase the audio quality, if it helps at all, it's not going to take up much extra data. So down here in recording, likely when you're recording, whether or not you're streaming, you're going to want to save to a file. So the default recording format is .flv. But generally, I like to change that to either MP4 or .mov. MP4 is a more common format. It works with more video editors, so you can't go wrong with MP4. But if you want to record multiple audio streams at the same time, in other words, you want to separate your desktop audio from your microphone audio, then .mov is going to be a good format for that. So I've been using .mov lately. And of course, you can set a recording path here. Hit apply. You can go into the advanced settings if you want, but it's not really necessary for most people. So one thing I will point out is if you want to set specific audio tracks to go to streaming and to recording. So if you want to record where your output video file has two audio tracks, one for the desktop and one for the microphone, and then your stream is still using the separate audio track 1, which combines them. So going back in here, you see audio track 1, and then for recording 2 and 3. Then we have to wire up the audio devices in the mixer to go to those audio channels. So if I go to Advanced Audio Properties by clicking on the settings icon for either desktop audio or the microphone, you can see how I have it set up. So in order to make sure that the stream receives both the desktop audio and the microphone, the desktop audio and the microphone are both outputting to tracks 1 here. By default, all 6 of these tracks will be checked. So if you want one of them to be left off of a track, you're going to have to uncheck it. So here, desktop audio 2 is the only audio device that is outputting to track 2, which means that in audio track 2, it's going to only be the desktop audio. And then for the microphone slash auxiliary, my microphone basically, it is outputting to tracks 3 and 1. So I use 1 as my streaming track, 3 as my microphone track for the recorded video file, and 2 as the desktop audio for the recorded video file. So if you have these set up here, make sure that you go back in again to the output. Make sure that you have audio track 1 for streaming, or whichever track you're using for streaming. And then for recording, make sure audio tracks 2 and 3 are checked. Now, as you can see down here, it says warning, certain formats such as FLV do not support multiple tracks per recording. .mov supports multiple tracks, MKV supports multiple tracks, and MP4 also supports multiple tracks. The problem is, MP4, if you cancel the recording before it's done recording, you can lose the entire video file, which is bad for long recordings. And MKV isn't compatible with all video editors, so you might need to reconvert MKV into .mp4. And that's why I use .mov, because .mov has both of the advantages with none of the drawbacks. It's compatible with most video editors, and it supports multiple audio tracks without losing all the data if the stream of the recording happens to shut off. By the way, if you do want to convert a video file that you've recorded inside of OBS, then you should go up to File, Remux Recordings. You can find your old video file, so here I have a .mov, and you set a new output. So the output can be any video file that OBS can record in. So if I want to change the video file output type, then I just need to come down here and set it to one of these formats down at the bottom. So if I want to convert this .mov into MKV, I just change the extension at the end to .mkv, hit save, and hit Remux. So if you do that, it'll convert the video file from .mov to .mkv, and we can go in here, play it, and make sure that it is still running properly. Making sure that the bitrate is set to 8000 here. Audio bitrate on all of the tracks, I will make that 192 as well, and hit apply. So let's quickly go through the rest of the settings. Audio, if you want to select a microphone source here, you would do that for mic auxiliary device. So here I can select my webcam mic or my headset mic. I will keep it on the headset. You can also enable a desktop audio device. So generally this will be like your Realtek high definition audio if that's the drivers that your computer uses, which a lot of computers seem to. So if you want it to record the desktop audio, you would make sure that's selected there. If not, you can leave it as disabled. You can change the audio channels from stereo to 7.1 surround sound if you need to. And moving on to the video tab. So by default, whenever you have a new profile, it's going to take 180p and scale that down to 720p. But if you want your final output to be the equal resolution of your computer monitor, then you're going to want to make the output resolution the same as your base resolution. So here I'm going to make it 1080p by setting that. You can also change your FPS value to 60 or 48 or whatever if you want here. But remember, the more FPS you are recording in, the higher your streaming bitrate needs to be. Likewise, that also applies to recording to a video file, because if you're recording to a file, it still needs to look good. You gotta give it enough bitrate so that it will look good in the output. But here I will set it as 30 since that's what we're going with. There's hotkeys here. So sometimes I like to set hotkeys for starting and stopping recording. You can do something like Control-Alt-R if you want, and you can make it the same hotkey for both of them. That way you can always start and stop by hitting Control-Alt-R. Just an example, you can also set the same thing up for streaming. Push-to-talk keys for your microphone may also be a useful option, but I generally prefer to use the noise gates, which I showed you earlier on, as an audio filter to basically automatically have that function. Everything in the advanced tab we can pretty much leave alone, so I'm going to hit apply and hit OK. So before I show you how to stream, let's show you just how to record to a basic video file. Of course, in the settings, we have the output for recording set to C drive/users/Chris/videos. When we hit start recording, it's going to start recording whatever is in this scene to a video file. So nothing's really happening here. And I'm going to hit stop recording in order to stop that recording. So now we can go find that video over in my videos. We can open it up with a tool like VLC Media Player, and we can play that back. And of course, with these video clips you record, you can drag those into a video editor of your choice if you need to make a final YouTube video. So next, let's talk about how to actually stream to Twitch. So with your Twitch account logged in, you're going to want to go to Twitch TV/dashboard. And then you're going to want to click on channel under settings, which will give you your primary stream key. So don't let other people see this, or they will be able to stream as you, obviously. So we're just going to copy this and go paste it into OBS. So where we paste it into OBS is under File Settings, and then on the Stream tab, we have Service, Server, and Stream Key. So I'm going to Control-V to paste that in and hit Apply. So now we can hit Start Streaming to actually take whatever we have recording here in OBS and forward that out to the Twitch server so that whoever wants to watch can watch and interact with you as a streamer. Note that starting the stream and starting your recording are separate things. So if you hit Start Streaming, like I'll do here right now, it's not actually going to record to a file. It's only going to record out to Twitch. So you also want to hit start recording. Now, the green light that I was talking about here in the bottom right, if you are running into issues with your stream upload bitrate, then that's going to show up here. Well, you can see the kbs per second that it's actually outputting. It may be below your max, but if the screen turns to a yellow or red, you may be having issues. So let's go check Twitch really quick. So I will click on the live tab, and we should be able to see my absolutely terrible stream going right here, but I will make it full mode. And we can see 0 viewers, but the logo is streaming to Twitch TV, so that's cool, I suppose. Obviously, you want a full scene set up with microphones and all that. So I'm gonna stop the stream there. Just remember to check your actual stream on the website before you get too far into recording your video. So next, let's do streaming to YouTube. Some people like to do that, particularly if you're not into gaming. So under the Stream tab, we changed the service to YouTube. You can see that there's other services too, but mostly it's Twitch or YouTube that people use. So it's the same idea here. We just need a different stream key. Now, in order to get our YouTube stream key or to stream to YouTube, we want to go to youtube.com/live_dashboard. And if we scroll down to the bottom of the page here, there's going to be server URL, which we don't really need, that's already included in OBS, and the stream name/key. So we want to reveal this and copy it. So I have my stream key copied. We go to OBS and paste it in. And you can choose either the primary or the secondary backup server, but primary is going to be fine unless it's down. So let's do that, hit OK, and let's do a stream to YouTube for a few seconds. So when you start streaming, it should show up here. You should see the green for going live, elapsed time, and once it refreshes, you should see whatever you're recording also show up on the little preview window here. So we can see we've got the OBS logo streaming there, and that's basically the idea. So of course there's going to be a few more niche settings inside of OBS that you can play around with and learn as you go, but For the most part, I've shown you guys how you can record, how you can stream, and set up your scenes with sources so that you can record what you want to record or stream online if you need to do that. So hopefully you guys have learned a lot from this tutorial. I hope it wasn't too long. I've been Chris, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in my future video content. So the first thing you're going to want to do to set OBS up for game recording with a webcam is to have your game open. So boot it up in the background. I have it in windowed mode right now just for the convenience of being able to switch between OBS and Dark Souls really quickly. So once you've done that, boot up OBS and you're going to want to add a new scene. So you can call this whatever you want. I would normally make it the name of the game, so Dark Souls 3 here. Then you click on add a new source and you go over to game capture. If you'd like, you can give this capture source a name, so I might call it Dark Souls Capture. Hit OK. To capture specific window, because I wanted to only capture the game that I have set up for this scene. So in window, I will select the name of the game window, which is obviously Dark Souls 3 here. So for some games, you may not get the game capture to work. So instead what you can do is you can swap that out for window capture. So I'm going to go down to Add Window Capture. I'll call this Dark Souls Window. And then from window, you click on the drop down and select the name of your game. In most cases with game capture or window capture, you'll get one of them to appear here. So I'm going to hit OK. Now I can get rid of the old Dark Souls capture. If you need to stretch the window a little bit, you can hold shift down while clicking on an edge so that it fits the entire recording screen. And now to add in the webcam / Facecam, we click on add source one more time and choose video capture device. So here, create new, hit OK. And you should be able to see from a drop down one of the devices you have currently connected. So I have a laptop, it has this webcam, so I'm going to hit OK here. So now that the webcam is there, if you want to adjust its size, just hold shift and click on one of the corners and drag it until you get the size you want. If you want it to maintain the aspect ratio, then hold control down while you adjust it. And now we can drag it to any corner we want, whichever one is best for the game we're currently playing. You can also hold Alt down while clicking on one of the edges if you want to cut away part of the webcam view. Aside from that, do make sure that video capture device is showing above your game capture. Otherwise the game will be showing in front of the webcam, and that's not what we want. We want the webcam on top of the game. So if you've done that, you should have a webcam in one of your corners and the game recording behind. So all you need to do to start recording now is to hit the start recording button and it'll start outputting to a file. And that's pretty much it for the basic setup of OBS playing a game with a webcam attached to the video. So I've been Chris, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in my future video content. Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I want to show you guys how we can use OBS to monitor our audio input, or basically do a mic check before we start recording, even with all of our filters applied. So if you haven't ever applied a filter in OBS, I do recommend you go ahead and try checking out some of the VST plugins like Reaper Filter. If I click over here, basically the settings icon for the microphone, and go down to filters, as I just did really fast there, you can see that there are some audio filters, some of which are built in, like noise suppression or basic compressor, but you can also use any VST audio plugin inside of OBS before you get the audio output. So what the Reaper filter does, and we'll just briefly cover this, is you can use it as basically a compressor or to subtract some of your background noise. That's what I'm doing here with mode subtract. So a lot of those really quiet noises that still might show up in a microphone are removed from my final output, which gives me better sounding audio. And those are the kind of things that you really want to test with your actual output monitoring. So to do the audio output monitoring, we click on the settings icon for the mic / auxiliary input. We go to Advanced Audio Properties, and now over here, Mic Aux, you move over here to the right next to Tracks, and it'll say Audio Monitoring. If we click on this and we choose either Monitor Output, Mute Output, or Monitor Output, it's going to let us actually hear the audio input with our basically our desktop output device. That's usually either your speakers or the headset you're wearing. So when I actually click there and enable it, I can hear it in my headphones. The only reason you're not hearing it is because in my recording I have desktop audio turned off. I don't want you guys to have to hear my voice twice at once, right? But if you did this, you would be hearing it twice. If you were recording with monitor and output on, and you had desktop audio enabled, and you also had mic aux enabled, it would record your voice twice. That's why there's the second option, monitor only mute output, so that you would only hear it once. I believe that mutes the microphone, but actually lets that audio go through to the desktop audio. Now, you would only be able to use the settings for microphone audio testing anyway, so when you're done testing, and it actually sounds good to you with those filters enabled, you should definitely go in here and set monitor off. So that's really all there is to it. Just gotta check your audio before you start recording, and this is an easier way than recording a video and then checking the video after you're done to make sure that it didn't sound too bad, because sometimes you have to record the whole thing again if you didn't check first. So that's basically all there is to audio monitoring, doing a mic check in OBS before you get started recording your video. So I hope you found this video useful. I've been Chris, and I'll see you guys in my future video content.
Hello everybody, in this video we're going to be talking about how to do scene transitions inside of OBS Studio, which is one of the things I believe this version of the app does a bit better than the original. And the idea here is that whenever you have one scene, you may want to switch to a different scene on the fly. Now, at the most basic level, you could simply click between the two different scenes, but in reality, if you're recording something, screencasting, whatever, you're probably not going to be able to just come in here and manually do this, and it would just be a mess. So one thing you can actually do is to set hotkeys. That's the probably basic solution. And if you go up to File and Settings, we can find the hotkeys menu over here. And you can see that for each scene you've set up, they will allow you to set 3 different hotkeys: show image, hide image, and the one we're actually looking for that's relevant to us, switch to scene. Currently I have it set to Shift 1 and Shift 2. So what we could do is, while we were recording, we set up hotkeys that aren't relevant to the recording itself, something that would be a little strange to just hit randomly. And we can just hit those keys and immediately transition between 2 different scenes. Now, another thing we can do is actually use the studio mode, and this doesn't really change how we transition, but it allows us to see a preview of what we're going to be transitioning to before we actually do it. So whatever's on the right is what's currently showing in the video, and whatever's on the left is what we're going to transition to. So if we want to change what we're going to transition to, while we're in studio mode, we just click on that scene, and we could hit transition, which will move that the selected transition target over to the right in the live mode, and it puts whatever scene we had before back over here on the left, where we can transition back to it again. So that kind of thing would be useful if you're, for instance, going on a break mode if you were live streaming. But you get the idea there. And then, of course, you can change the different scene transitions. Basically, cut and fade are the basic ideas. Cut is instant. Fade is going to transition over a period of time, which is the milliseconds amount. And yeah, as you can see here, you don't have to actually select the scene transition in the bottom right. You can simply click between them. But the optimal way to do this, really, I do believe, is to have hotkeys set. You don't want to be looking at the OBS Studio interface unless for some reason the person who's recording the video is also not the one managing OBS Studio. Like if you have a control room guy in the background. I mean, I don't think most people can have that level of a production, but general idea there. So yeah, set up hotkeys. That's my recommendation. And then you can simply switch between them in non-studio mode by hitting Shift 1 and Shift 2, or you can go back into studio mode. The thing is, though, if you are in studio mode, hitting the hotkeys will only queue up the transition. It won't actually put it live. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you want to do the final transition, you can hit the transition button there. Or you can go up to File Settings and look for the hotkey to do a studio mode transition, which would be basically right here. Transition, quick transition cut, or quick transition fade, which is an alternate way you can do it. For instance, I'll just demonstrate it here really quick. We'll make this Shift 3, Shift 4, Shift 5, hit apply, go back here. So we want to do the default transition, which is a fade, and it will fade to there with Shift F3. If we want to do, we bound cut to Shift 4, so we can do immediate cuts. And we can also do fade with F5. And we can also do a fade with Shift 5. Now, Shift 5 will always be a fade, but Shift 3, just a flat out transition, that depends on what's selected down here in the bottom right for scene transitions. So that's going to be all for this video on how to set up and use transitions inside of OBS Studio. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you in my next video.
In this Open Broadcaster software video, we're going to be talking about ordering with respect to different sources that you may have within a scene. Although simple videos and online streams may have only one source, the majority of professional or high-quality ones are going to have multiple sources that go into making their final video product. For instance, many streamers to Twitch often add an overlay to their video to give themselves a bit of uniqueness over their competition. It's also possible to add extra information on screen, such as a list of donators, which can encourage people to actually donate to your videos or your streams. Regardless of what your goal is, you're going to eventually need to actually order your different sources inside of Open Broadcaster software. Right now on screen we have 4 different images, and you can already tell that a couple of them are overlapping the other ones, and the reason for that is because the ones in front are higher on the order list than the ones in the background. Generally speaking, the item you're going to want on the lowest section of the list is the overall video background, and then any other smaller images or borders or overlays you're going to put in the video should be higher on the list so that they appear in front of the background video. So if we want to order these around, what we have to do is right-click on each source image, go down to Order, and then you can move them up on the list, move them down on the list, put them at the top, or put them at the bottom. Now, as for what order they're currently in, you can see just by looking at the sources list that image 4 is on top, followed by image 3, image 2, and image 1. And you see immediately that this image over here on the right is now higher than image 4. If we hit Edit Scene, we can see that the border for image 4 goes well beyond this blue line where the image is actually showing, and we know previously that there was more blue water background above it, but it's not going to overlay this other image of the flower because that one's higher on the list. Now we can do the same thing with image 1 and image 3 over here. Image 3 is at the top of the list. If we want to move image up, we can right-click, go to Order, move up, or alternatively, if you want to jump it to the top, just hit Move to Top. But I'll hit Move Up here twice, and now you see it appears above this one. Now to give you an example of where this could be really useful, we have this overlay over here and a box for webcam. We're going to put an image in that instead. So let's go ahead and select image 1 and put this over here. Now, of course, the bird is too big, so we're going to shrink that down quite a bit here. And then stretch it out a little bit more. And now you see here why I have it selected. Because image 5, or in other words, the overlay, is in front of the bird image, all of the extra bird image background is just not going to show in the video. So this makes it really convenient to fit things like a webcam inside of the frames you have. If there wasn't an empty transparent box for this image to fit in, and we still had the overlay on top, then the webcam or the image we have inside of the box would actually be hidden completely. So I hope that gives you a pretty good idea of the importance of ordering inside of OBS and how to do it. Till the next video, see you then. Hello everyone, today I'd like to show you how to use color key and chroma key within Open Broadcaster software. Now, color key and chroma key can get you in effect something like this. Obviously you see there's a little bit of green tinted around this guy's edges, but it's pretty close to having a completely filtered out background. So although this image actually has a lot more to it, which is just a green screen behind the guy, and I can show you that just by turning off the color key, by going to right-click Properties, and you see he has the color key for the green screen that he was recording or taking the image on. But if we enable color key, it takes it off. And the same thing applies to video. When you're using videos, it's called chroma key, but it works exactly the same. You check it, you select a color. Like, watch, if I select a color that's not there and hit OK, well, now his face is a little bit filtered because that was a lot closer to orange. But you get the idea. It will try to filter out the colors or the color or colors closest to what you select.
And the higher your similarity is, the larger that range is actually going to be for what it accepts in your chroma key. So you would just go ahead and hit the select button, then choose the color or left click on the color that you want to select. Go ahead, hit OK, but most likely you're going to have to play with the settings. Increasing the similarity, as I just mentioned, will increase the range of colors that it will filter out, and increasing the blend will help work with the edges around the character or the actor and remove some of the little extra color that remains. You might not get it exactly perfect the first time, and that's also one reason it's important to have, if you're going to be recording with a webcam or something like that, possibly for one of your games, that you want a evenly colored set with a very vibrant color so that it can filter all of it out. It won't filter any of your body parts, and that's usually why people recommend that you use a green screen, that vibrant green color that this guy has behind him, because that is the most likely color, generally, to be able to filter without filtering out any part of the person itself. You can try other colors, like right now I have a pink screen sitting around, but that doesn't work perfectly because the pink overlaps with my lip color. So yeah, that's generally why people stick with green. But aside from that, that's really all that there is to it. Once again, right click, go to properties, make sure color key or chroma key is checked, chroma key if you're doing video. Select the colors, hit OK, and then you might have to go back in and play a little bit around with the similarity and blend. For chroma key, there's also a third option called color correction or something like that. If you increase that, it can also help with some of the little green that stays on the edges of the person being recorded and remove some of that color for you. Yeah, just go ahead, play around with the settings, and you should be able to get it to work. And then from there, your character, your actor, or the image will take up a lot less real estate on your screen. So it can help you out a lot, especially if you're doing presentations or a live stream. So thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, let me know down below, and I will see you all next time.
In this open broadcaster software video, we're going to be talking about using subregions to hide portions of a window from your final video. Now, when you use a subregion, you're literally selecting the portion of your window that you want to show in your video. In this case, we're going to use it with this Twitch alert box over here on the screen. And you can see when we go to the preview window that with the standard settings, it's showing not only the box down here, but it's also showing the URL of Firefox, and we don't actually want that to appear in our video. Now, just to demonstrate how this Twitch alert box works, I'm going to hit the test follow button over here on my other monitor, and you can see it shows when someone is following, when someone makes a donation, or when someone's a subscriber, or becomes one. And that's really useful if you're streaming to Twitch. But the only thing we actually want to appear in the final product is that little animation with the text that goes alongside it. So to start things off, we have to use subregions. So we right-click on Window Capture, go to Properties. Here you'll see the subregion box about 50% down in the window capture options, and inside subregion you have the subregion checkbox which enables it, but just enabling it doesn't actually do anything because a full subregion, which is going to have the dimensions specified there until you've played around with it, is just going to be taking the subregion of your entire window. So we can see this actually if we hit select region. A rectangular box will appear, and that shows us what is being selected in our subregion. And you can see everything from the top with this Twitch alerts, everything in the inner window at least, is selected. And we don't actually want that portion to be in the final video. So it can't be larger than the window, and it can't be outside the bounds of the window itself, but we can drag the height down here so that the Twitch alert box is no longer in this rectangle. And we can move the sides in a bit just to ensure that nothing at all will get captured except for that purple area and the animation itself. Now to remove the purple, we actually need to use color key as we discussed in the last video. But let's go ahead and hit OK and see how it appears in our recording screen. And you can see all we have here is the purple background, and that's what we want. So now to finish this up, we have to go and enable color key. And this is very simple. All you need to do is select the color that we're trying to remove, and bam, all of that purple color is immediately gone. And now, if I was to hit test follow alert,
you would only see the animation and the text. Now, it's not perfect. It has a little bit of a purple border around it, or whatever color you decide to use for your Twitch alerts, but that's basically the intended effect. Now, it's not just Twitch alerts you can do this with. Any window capture, any game capture, or any monitor capture you can use subregions with. In the case of images, it's unnecessary because when you put an image in OBS, you have full control over an image using the edit scene function. But you don't have that for Windows or games, so using subregions becomes very useful for those. So that's the gist of subregions within Open Broadcaster software. Till the next video, see you then.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how we can add in a webcam to show ourself in a video. In other words, a talking head, and we'll also be applying chroma key or color key in order to filter out some of the background so that what we're left with is just a talking head at the end of this. So in OBS, you want to go to the sources for whichever scene you want to add the webcam to. We'll go down to the plus for add, or we can right click and go to add video capture device. I'm going to create a new video capture device and we'll call this webcam. So here I need to select a webcam. It can be my Logitech HD or the Lenovo EasyCam, which is the built-in webcam. And usually it would pop up here, but in my case, I'm going to have to set a custom resolution to get it to show up, I think. And there we go. For most people, you won't have to do that, but that might be one fix. And now we have myself inside of the video. And we have a white background behind us. That's what you would have by default. For many people, this will be okay, as long as you have a good background setup. But some people may want to filter out all of this white background you see behind me. So to add any kind of effect to our webcam, you have to right-click on the source you want to edit, go to Filters, and it's going to pop up this Audio Video Filters and Effects Filters boxes. From there, if you want to add in chroma key, which we do, you click on the Add button in the bottom left-hand corner for the effects filters and go to chroma key. So in order to filter out a background color, you're going to have a solid, weird color that does not usually show up on your clothing or on your skin. So for instance, green is the classic color to go with, and ideally you want the lighting in your room to make the background one universal color. So if you're really trying to get professional about this, you're going to need to do some real-world lighting setup and have a solid green curtain or something close to that. But in this video, I'll try to filter out this green. It's a solid green in real life. The lighting, obviously, you can see is a little bit uniform here. But we'll try to make it work. So in effect filters, what you would do here is you go hit plus, chroma key. We're going to hit OK here. And green is selected out of the box here, and you can see how it kind of tries to filter out the green, but it doesn't do it quite perfectly. So we can disable this temporarily and go to Custom, select Color, and pick a screen color in order to get a more precise green. So let's try to get that one right there, hit OK, and enable the chroma key. So sometimes when we select a color and we have the similarity turned up, it's going to filter out a lot more than what we want inside of the video. So we have to turn down the similarity until it basically filters out the background or whatever we're trying to make invisible. So I'm going to leave it at about 100 here. You can see it doesn't perfectly affect my shirt there, so it's probably not the ideal. But if we close this out now, you can see part of the background. This image I had loaded up before the video started through the helmet. So the helmet's definitely there, but it takes the green color and it turns it into alpha. So the same principle will apply when you have a solid colored background behind you, and then you try to filter all of that out, because then this green area, it'll be like that, but for the entire background. And then you can have any gameplay footage, any kind of tech footage, whatever you want behind you. You just need the proper setup for that. So you can go online, you can look for some green screen materials. They're not too expensive. But as far as setting this up in terms of OBS goes, that's basically all there is to it. The real trick is getting the right lighting and the right background setup. You want as uniform as a color as possible.
So as long as you have that, you should be able to get this going inside of OBS now. So I've been Chris. Thanks for watching this brief demonstration on adding in a webcam and using chroma key in order to filter out the background inside of OBS. And I will see you guys in my future video content.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I want to show you guys how you can record web browsers inside of OBS updated for 2019. So let's get started with the Chrome web browser. So in OBS for sources on any scene, I'm going to right click, go to add and choose window capture. We can call it Chrome or something similar. And the window is going to be Google Chrome. So you should see Google Chrome somewhere on your list of open windows as long as the program is open. And we'll hit OK. Now, there's a good chance that you will see a black box with nothing in it. If that's the case, then what you need to do is go into Chrome, click on the three dots at the top right hand corner, go down to settings to open up this page, and then we can scroll down here and you'll see a button called advanced. Click on that and you'll get more options available. And the one we're looking for is going to be close to the bottom. So under system, use hardware acceleration when available. You may need to turn this off in order to get Chrome to work properly with OBS. So toggle that off and click relaunch. And when you do that, Chrome should appear inside of OBS. So now we can drag Chrome wherever we want. If we want, we can expand it to be the full view. Feel free to stretch it by holding Shift in order to make it a full window view if you want. But either way, that's how you can get Chrome to show up. So next we're going to do Brave web browser. Now with many web browsers, a lot of them are currently Chrome based. So in many cases, you're going to need to do the exact same thing in other web browsers like Brave in order to get them to show up in OBS. So this Brave web browser, I'm going to right click, add window capture, and I'll call it Brave here. So you can see it's already selected the window brave.exe, and you can see in the same way it's not showing. So Brave is currently Chrome based. So if you go into the options menu, it'll look almost exactly the same. If we go down to systems, turn off hardware acceleration when available, relaunch it, and you should get the same result. So next up, Firefox. As of the end of January in 2019, we can get it to work simply by right click, add window capture, call it Firefox, and find the Firefox window and hit OK. At least on my computer, it's not requiring turning off hardware acceleration, but if for some reason you need to, you can still find it by going into the options menu, which is up here, and then choose options, which will bring up this page. And you can scroll down to where it will say performance, use recommended performance settings. So if you need to, you can uncheck that and turn off hardware acceleration. But as you saw with mine, it wasn't actually necessary to do that. And then some web browsers like Microsoft Edge, for whatever reason, don't really seem to have an immediate fix. I did look around a little bit to see if there was one, but I couldn't really dig up anything. So if you're ever trying to use a web browser that for some reason won't work with window capture and doesn't have a hardware acceleration option to turn off, a workaround would be to right click, go to add, and instead do display capture. So I can call this Edge display, which actually will capture the full screen. So if you have multiple monitors, this will work a little bit better because then you can just have one monitor dedicated to the web browser while you record it. But I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here, and we can maximize that window. So what you can do while you have Edge maximized is if you want to cut away the bottom bar, just hold Alt while you left click on the circle in the middle bottom, and drag that up a little bit until you can no longer see it, but you should be able to completely see the Edge browser there. And then if you still need it to be full screened, you can hold Shift while left clicking on a corner and drag that in the direction you need to stretch it. And that should give you a similar result to if you were using window capture. The downside to this is, as you can obviously see, if there's another window on top of the Edge browser, that's going to get caught in it. But if you minimize OBS and you just record it as is, then you should be able to capture the Edge browser just fine as well. So that's the gist of how you add web browsers to OBS so that you can capture them on your screen in 2019. I hope this video has helped some of you guys out, particularly those using a Chrome-based web browser who may have been getting that black screen before.
I've been Chris, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in my future video content.
In this video, we're going to start diving into the settings of Open Broadcaster software in more depth, starting with the General tab, and then we'll spend the next few videos talking about the other tabs in the settings menu. So on the General tab, we can create new profiles. Now, this isn't the only place you can create new profiles. Of course, you can go to Profiles, New, Duplicate if you want to copy one over, and then just edit it from there. And you can rename and remove them. But in the settings menu, we can do the same thing. However, you'll notice that add and rename are actually grayed out right now. And that's because if you want to add a new profile in or rename one to another name, you actually have to change the name first and then you hit the button. So if we wanted a new profile like customized profile, we could hit rename to rename the previous OBS profile to customized profile. Or we can hit add to make this one a completely separate profile that we can play around with. Now below you'll notice that there's an option for a notification area icon, at least if you're running the Windows version. And this just means that when you have the program up, it'll add an icon to the notification area of Windows. If you don't know where that is, it's to the left of where it displays the clock. And you can also choose whether you want it to minimize to the notification area, which would mean that you would just click on the icon in the notification area if you wanted to open it back up when it's been minimized. Now below that is an option to enable cursor over projector, and what that means is when you're actually recording an OBS video, you can have the scene, and that's the video that's displayed inside of the OBS window, show full screen on another monitor. And if you have enable cursor over projector checked, then when you have your cursor running over that scene, it'll show. Now what unchecking enable cursor over projector doesn't do is remove this cursor you see on screen right now from the video itself if I have the cursor moving into the shot inside of the scene wherever the video is showing. Lastly, on the General tab, you can get some debugging information if you check Show Log window on OBS launch. Now what this means is that when you open up the program, a accompanying log window is going to pop up, and as you do your operations, as you're recording videos, certain information is going to be recording to that log. Now, most people are going to have no real need for that, but for technical people, or if you're reporting a problem to a technical person, that information may come in handy. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the Encoding tab, which primarily focuses on video quality and system performance while you're recording videos. Till then! In this video, we're going to be talking about the Encoding Settings tab of Open Broadcaster software. It primarily focuses on controlling the file size and quality of your video as you're producing it. In the Encoding tab, we have a few different options we can play around with here. You'll remember from the quick start recording video that the max bitrate determines the quality of your video. A higher bitrate means it'll take up more space and it will be more internet bandwidth intensive if you're streaming, but the quality will be increased as well. Likewise, the opposite is true. If you have a low bitrate, then the quality of the video will look worse, but it'll have a lower file size, and if you're streaming, you'll need a less powerful internet connection in order to run the stream. Now, once again, you're probably going to have a large difference between the quality you want to set it to when you're recording on stream and the quality settings that you want when you're just going to be sending the file straight to your computer and you're not streaming online. And that's simply because upload bandwidth speeds are a limiting factor when you're recording videos and streaming them online. And at the top here, we have 3 different encoding settings, which are going to have varying performance levels, but in general, you don't have to play around with it too much. Each of them work just fine. But what an encoder does is when you're recording video footage, it will compare each frame to the previous frame and see what information is the same. But if you're doing a static shot or recording an application that doesn't move around a lot like we're doing right now, then it'll save on the final file size by ignoring the information that's static between different shots. Now, if you get any further into encoders, then it becomes a discussion of which performs better, which will give you better frames per second while you're recording, and that kind of stuff. But for 9.5 out of 10 people out there, really going into that is completely unnecessary. Using either of these is fine. If you're streaming to a specific video site, it might actually just recommend the encoder for you. Generally, X264 is just fine. Now, CBR stands for constant bitrate, and the purpose of having this checked is primarily if you're streaming video live online, so that while you're sending video to the servers, it's going to keep the same bitrate. It's going to try to find the target bitrate and keep it around there as much as possible. The alternative to this is that you would have a fluctuating bitrate as there's movement around the screen or if there isn't movement. What constant bitrate does for you in practice is keep the amount of spikiness in the stream and random lag to a minimum because you're always sending the same amount of data to the servers, so it will be more consistent. But what this also means is that when you have periods of low movement, it's going to be sending an unnecessary amount of data to those servers, which would matter if you have a limited amount of bandwidth per month. In most cases, if you're going to be streaming, then you should have constant bitrate checked. And to the right of that, you have CBR padding, which helps to kind of smooth out the process of constant bitrate. So you should also have that checked if you're going to use constant bitrate. Now, if you don't have constant bitrate checked, then the option for quality balance opens up. And what quality balance means is that instead of trying to shoot for 4,000 kilobits a second at all times as the max bitrate, it's going to be trying to find a certain amount of quality in the video output. If you increase the quality balance, then it'll increase the amount of bits that go into every frame of video. And if you decrease it, then the quality of your video footage may drop, but the amount of bits that go into the video, the file size, is going to shrink as well. Of course, this also corresponds if you're recording online. A higher quality balance is going to consume more bandwidth, have a higher bitrate, and a lower quality balance is going to look worse, but it's going to consume less bandwidth. Now below you have the audio encoding settings, including the codec that you want the audio to be encoded into. Generally, setting it to AAC is recommended instead of MP3, and that's simply because MP3 isn't compatible with all media players, but AAC tends to have more compatibility. Now as for the bitrate, a higher bitrate is going to have higher quality. Of course, instead of the video footage, this is referring to the quality of your audio. Normally, I think this is set to 128. But I have it set higher to 256 kilobits per second in the event that it might get slightly higher quality audio output. However, it's worth mentioning that 96 or 128 kilobits per second on the audio bitrate is usually just fine, and few people can actually tell the difference. Also note that if you're streaming online and you have a high audio bitrate set, then that's going to take up some of the data that would otherwise be allocated to your video quality and instead used for audio. You can change the audio format to 44.1 kHz, but having it at 48 kHz is just fine unless you have a specific reason to reduce it. But perhaps more important is the channel settings. If you want to change to mono sound, you can do that here, but most people would just leave it in stereo to get that 2-channel sound effect. In the next video, we're going to be talking about video settings in Open Broadcaster software, specifically resolution downscale, filter, FPS, and arrow themes and how they interact with Open Broadcaster software. Till then. In this video, we're going to be talking about the audio and video settings in Open Broadcaster software. On the Video tab, the video adapter is the graphics card that you are using in order to process all of this video footage and data. Now, if you have multiple graphics cards, for instance, if you're running a slide configuration with 2 NVIDIA cards, then you will see all of your available graphics adapters right here in this list. Generally speaking, you won't need to mess with this, but if you do face a situation where you have multiple video adapters, I probably would just select the one that's strongest on your computer to process the data, since this is a pretty graphics-intensive process after all. Now, as we've briefly talked about, you can customize the resolution here in the Brace Resolution box. If you want to set a specific width and height, you do that in these 2 boxes respectively, and when you do set any kind of values here, it's going to give you the aspect ratio, or the ratio of the width to the height of your video. By default, this is just going to be your base resolution, and in most cases you can just keep it like that. Sometimes you might want to shrink it down to, say, 720p resolution, which would be 1280 by 720, but you can have any values you want here. Now, if you have custom values set here and you want the option to just be able to have a full screen resolution of one of your monitors, then you can simply click on the monitor radio button here and choose which one you want from your list of monitors. Bilinear filtering is going to have the least impact on your computer performance, but it's also not necessarily going to look as good as bicubic sharper filtering or Lanczos filtering. If you want to change the amount of frames per second in the video, you would do that right here, which by default you can go up to 60, but you can't go higher than that until we change a setting in the advanced settings. If you're going to be recording video in Windows 7 or Vista and you're going to be doing a monitor capture specifically, it's recommended that you check this box to disable the aerial theme so that it doesn't impact your performance while you're recording. Now on the audio tab, we already discussed choosing a microphone through the microphone auxiliary audio device drop-down list, but you can also choose a default audio device. If you have your audio outputting to a specific device on your computer, which could be a headset or your regular speakers, then you're going to want to select it from this list so that the audio is actually picked up while you're recording. However, generally that's just the default audio device, so if it's already picking up the audio signal, then don't worry about changing this. If you want your microphone audio to come as one-channel mono sound, then you can check this box. And if you only want to be able to see connected devices, those which are currently connected to your computer on this drop-down list, then go ahead and check Show Only Connected Devices. If you're going to be using push-to-talk, then you can set the delay on the microphone right here. Push-to-talk would be where you hit a hotkey, and then when you hit that hotkey, your microphone is activated. But by default, your microphone doesn't actually send the signals to OBS until you hit the push-to-talk key. When you're normally recording, though, your microphone is just on all the time and it picks up everything. With desktop boost or microphone auxiliary boost, you can increase the sound on those devices, your desktop audio or your microphone, by increasing the number here. Generally, you don't need to increase it. Another way to get your audio settings right would be to play on the gain on your microphone if you have a spinner dial for that. And in the main OBS window, which I'll go back and show right now, you can actually decrease and increase the final output sound for both the desktop speaker over here and the microphone over here. So generally changing that setting is unnecessary, but it's there if you need it. Now, if for some reason you notice a desync between your microphone audio coming to the computer and the footage on screen, the movement and the action, you can actually set a microphone synchronization offset here by giving it some milliseconds, which means if you put 50 milliseconds, when OBS receives the data, it's going to wait 50 milliseconds before it adds that data into the output. Now that's all for this video. In the next one, we're going to be focusing on hotkeys within open broadcasting software, which is one that everybody is going to want to tune into. So until then, see you then. In this video of Open Broadcaster software, I'm going to be showing you how to use hotkeys within OBS. So to get there, you go back to Settings, go down to the Hotkeys tab, and from here you'll have hotkeys for audio and hotkeys for broadcasting. Now you may remember from the audio video that you can actually use push-to-talk within OBS. What push-to-talk does is when you have this selected, your microphone will always be muted until you're holding down the push-to-talk key, which you can set here, and if you want a second push-to-talk key, you can set that in the second box. Using push-to-talk is useful if you want to minimize the amount of background noise in your video, since it'll only pick up noise when you're actually ready to talk. And it can be useful as well when you're streaming, when you only want the selective messages you choose to actually go through on the stream so that people can hear them. Now, an alternative to using push-to-talk would be to simply have a hotkey for muting and unmuting your microphone. The difference here would be that when you unpress the button that mutes your mic, it's still going to be muted. Whereas with push-to-talk, you have to hold down the button in order to talk on the video. Now, if you want to be able to mute all the other non-microphone audio by hitting a hotkey, you can do that by setting it in mute, unmute desktop. And this could be useful if you really want people to be able to hear what you're saying and you don't want any other distractions. Maybe the background music was being too loud and you just want them to be able to hear you. Then you can set a hotkey to do that. Now, if you want to actually set a hotkey, all you need to do is click in the selected box and push a key combination at the same time. It could be a single key on your keyboard, but that's generally not recommended. If you're going to do push-to-talk, it could be something as simple as V, or you could do Control-V as an alternative. And what's good about having to push down 2 or more keys to activate a hotkey is that it's unlikely to interfere with any of the other programs running on your computer or the game that you may be trying to record.
Now, if you want to get rid of a single hotkey, you simply have to click the clear button to the right of the hotkey box and it will reset to none. Now, as for the broadcast hotkeys, you start off with Start Stream, and Start Stream means that when you have a connection set up in your settings, which would be under Broadcast Settings, we'll hit yes to save the changes there, and you choose a service here, and you've put in your keys, the URLs, etc., all the other information you need to, then hitting the Start Stream hotkey is going to start sending the data from OBS straight to that live stream. Therefore, Start Stream hotkeys are something that you want to be careful with because you don't want to accidentally start broadcasting your computer or whatever you're doing unintentionally to the whole internet. So if you are going to set Start Stream or Stop Stream hotkeys, make sure it's something you won't unintentionally press. Now, in my experience, Start Recording has actually been one of the most useful hotkeys simply because it allows you to start recording what you need to record without having to exit out of your application or your game to go back to OBS to hit the Start Record button. But like Start and Stop Stream, it's important to make sure this isn't a hotkey combination you'd normally press for Start Recording and Stop Recording, because if you have a hotkey for Start Recording set, then you might end up accidentally recording a 4-hour video to your computer, which isn't the end of the world, but it will take up a lot of space and it'll be using resources in the background while you may be doing something completely unrelated to video recording to begin with. With Stop Recording, I'm not even sure having a hotkey set for that is such a great idea, because if you stop recording on accident, then you just lose everything you were working for. I figure with Stop Recording, it's better to just manually do it because then you're sure it's never going to accidentally stop for no reason. Now, as for a replay buffer, what this is having a temporary recording of the last X number of seconds of video footage. It'll only hold the last number of seconds that you set up in the broadcast settings down here, replay buffer length in seconds. And you'll notice that the replay buffer cannot be larger than the amount of random access memory on your computer because when the footage is temporarily stored in the replay buffer, it's putting that on the random access memory. Now, when you hit record from replay buffer, what it's going to do is take the information that's stored in the RAM, the buffer, and use that as the basis for a new video, a new permanent video that's actually saving to your hard drive. So if you hit record from replay buffer, it's going to take the previous 30 seconds and combine that with all the rest of the footage you record from this point forward and save that into a permanent file. Now, why recording from the replay buffer is so great is because not only can you go back 30 seconds or so in time to capture the footage and make that into a highlight, but you can also start recording for an unlimited amount of time until you're ready to stop the highlight. As a result, you capture the exact footage you wanted, and it makes a very easy to edit highlight. So that's all for hotkeys inside of Open Broadcaster software. They're not too hard to understand, but they sure are useful to use, so I do recommend you give them a try when you're recording your videos. In the next video, we'll be talking about how to automatically silence your microphone when you're not speaking into it using the microphone noise gate. See you then. In this video, we're going to be talking about the microphone noise gate within Open Broadcaster software and how you can use it to minimize background noise. Now, what a microphone noise gate does is it takes the signal being received from your microphone, the audio input, and if the sound levels, the volume, are below a certain threshold, the close threshold, then it's going to prevent that audio, which is normally going to be background noise audio, the really quiet stuff you don't want to show up on the video at all, and it's going to seal the microphone off. You won't be able to hear it because it's not going to accept that audio input. And the microphone noise gate will remain closed until the sound becomes loud enough, a high enough decibel count, for it to reach the open threshold. So the idea here is that your voice is the loudest thing that your microphone can pick up, and that's what you actually want to be recorded. But there may be extra background noises in the background that you don't want to show up, so it'll prevent as much background noise as possible by simply sealing off the microphone whenever you're not talking. Now, of course, if you want to be able to use this feature, you're going to have a microphone, and you're going to have a microphone set. So you would do that in Audio, Microphone Auxiliary Device. Just choose from the list the microphone you're going to try to record with. And go back to Microphone Noise Gate. So now to try to get the settings right, what we do is hit Enable Preview here. And I'm going to be talking. You can actually see my audio levels here right now. So what they recommend here is that the close threshold be approximately 4 decibels louder than the noise, and that means the background noise, not my voice like you see right here. I can show you the noise by being quiet for a second here. And we want to put it about 4 decibels above that. So I'd say right around here. And then they recommend that the open threshold be 6 decibels louder than the closed threshold. So we want this to be negative 38. Oh wait, no, negative 40. I can count. So now, whenever I have the noise gate enabled, and I'm not talking, then the audio is going to be below the closed threshold, as you can see right there. And whenever I am talking, the audio is easily going to be above the open threshold, so all the things I say should be picked up on the microphone noise gate and put through to the video. Now this is a great alternative to push to talk because you don't actually have to hit a hotkey down. The only downside is that you will have to speak consistently. If you get too quiet, then it's possible that some of the things you mumble on your microphone may not actually get picked up and put through to the video. Now when you enable the noise gate, you're going to have 3 extra settings which you can and probably should experiment with a little bit to make sure you get the settings as perfect as possible. The attack time is the amount of time it takes from your microphone to go from the off to the on state once you start talking, once your audio reaches the open threshold. It does this by fading in the sound, so if you have a long attack time, then your audio is going to progressively get louder and louder until it reaches the full on state. Now, for that reason, generally we leave the attack time at a very low setting, like 25 milliseconds. The hold time is the amount of time that the microphone noise gate will stay open after your audio drops below the closed threshold. Generally, having a few hundred milliseconds of hold time is good so that if you have to take a breath for a moment or you have a slight pause between words, that the noise gate won't have to fade out and then back in, causing the audio to sound a little bit weird. Now, you may have guessed that the release time is the reverse of the attack time, and you'd be perfectly correct on that. When your hold time expires and your audio is still below the closed threshold, then it's going to fade your audio out until you start talking again or until the noises coming through the microphone are loud enough to open it back up with the open threshold. Now that's all there is to the microphone noise gate. If you're trying to remove background noise and maybe you want to get it a little bit better, it's good to know that there are other post-production opportunities out there, such as Audacity. But if you're streaming live, then the microphone noise gate might be your only real option here, other than push to talk. In the next video, we're going to be talking about the scene switcher and switching between different scenes while you're live and recording by simply hitting hotkeys on your keyboard. Till then.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'm going to show you how to remove background noise from your recording and streaming inside of OBS using a tool called Reverb Filter. And before we actually get started with the video, I just want to show you what a massive difference it makes. So here's my current setup without the Reverb Filter. You can hear a lot of background noise, a lot of city sounds, a lot of static white noise. And then when I add the Reverb Filter on with the current setup, most of that goes away. So it can be very, very helpful. So in order to install Reverb so that you can use it in OBS, you need to go to reverb.fm/download.php. I'll put a direct link in the description. And you need to download the version associated with your Windows version. So if you are running 64-bit Windows, you should get 64-bit, 32-bit Windows, get the 32-bit version. If you need to know how to check what kind of Windows you're using, open up the search bar in Windows, run dxdiag, and it'll tell you where it says operating system, right here, if you have a 32-bit OS or 64-bit OS. So download that, go ahead and install it, and then inside of OBS, what you'll be able to do is click on the settings icon for your microphone, go down to filters, and you can add in the Reverb Filter. So to do that, we click the plus sign, you go to vst2.x plugin, you can give it a name if you want, something like Reverb Filter, and then from the drop down, REAFIR, basically short for Reverb Filter, _standalone, and you should have it in the left-hand side. Now, before we actually edit that filter and set it up, what I would recommend you do is you actually have headphones to use. Plug your headphones in, make sure that your audio from your desktop is outputting to the headphones, and then you click on this the gear icon once again, go to Advanced Audio Properties. And what we'll be able to do now is enable audio monitoring. So while we are testing the filter, basically getting it set up, we can hear the output audio after the filter is applied to the microphone, so that we can hear what it sounds like before we actually start recording. So if you have headphones turned on, you can change this to monitor and output temporarily. You only need it while we're testing it. You can disable this after we have everything set up. And that'll allow you to hear your audio as you talk into it to test it before you actually start doing the real recording. So very useful. Just don't do this if you are outputting your audio, your desktop audio, to your speakers that would basically be loud in the room. Because if you have a microphone and speakers, and microphone audio is coming out of the speakers, it's going to do a feedback loop, which will basically hurt your ears. So make sure that your audio is outputting to a closed device like headphones. Okay, so after you've done those two things, we can go back into the filters. So click on the gear, click filters. And for your reverb filter, I'm going to disable this one because it's redundant now. Open plugin interface. So you left click it on the audio filters and you click open plugin interface. Now while you're in here, you want the mode to be set to subtract. And the goal is going to be that when you're not talking, there should be no yellow bars popping up. So basically, the gray is your background noise, or the audio that's getting removed. And while you talk, you should see yellow bars, but only while you talk. That's the idea. Now, there is an automatic build noise profile, but I would recommend against using the automatic build noise profile because any sounds that aren't picked up while you're actually building that noise profile may show through when you're recording later. So as an alternative, you can set the edit mode to point smooth, and it'll give you a series of these little points you can click on. So basically, these points allow you to create curves between the audio sound spectrum. And all you really need to do is take these points and put them high enough that all across this audio spectrum, while you're not talking, all of the audio that's being picked up by your microphone ends up as these little gray lines. So to do that, we just raise and lower these points. And by the way, if you need to add an extra points for more control, Alt-left click. And Alt-left click to remove them as well. But we raise and lower these points until they're high enough that the background noise is gone. So if I lower this down too much, what's going to happen is that there will be yellow audio bars, basically audio going through the mic, even when I'm not talking. That's not what we want, so we need to raise this until those go away. Now, the only problem is, if you raise them too much, it's going to start taking away from your microphone audio quality. So the trick is to make it high enough that it removes all the background noise, but low enough that your microphone still sounds clear and not robotic when you actually talk into it. If you live in a less noisy place than I do, you'll probably have a lot less trouble, and you probably won't need to set these points so high, but it's going to vary depending on where you're recording from. And because you should have audio monitoring turned on, you'll be able to hear your audio while you talk into it. So just keep raising and lowering these points, adjusting the curves until it sounds right to you. When you're done, you can just close out of that. Make sure that reverb filter over here, the eyeball is enabled so that it's actually running. And then when you record, you'll be able to have the reverb filter take out some of the background noise while you're actually recording and streaming instead of having to do it in an editor in post-production. Just be sure that before you close out of OBS or before you actually start recording or streaming, that you turn off the audio monitoring. So we go back to Advanced Audio Properties, and we make sure audio monitoring is off. So that's going to be it for this tutorial, showing you how to remove background noise while you record or stream inside of OBS. I've been Chris, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in my future video content.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how you can record multiple audio tracks inside of Open Broadcaster software at the same time. So the reason you might want to do this is if you want game audio and your microphone audio to be separate, you can actually do that in OBS. So the first thing you need to do is go up to the File menu and go down to Settings. So under Settings, you're going to want to go to Output. Now if you see it in Simple mode at the top here, Output mode, you want to change it from Simple to Advanced. So in advanced mode, you're going to see streaming and recording. You want to go over to the recording tab. Streaming can only have one audio track, as you can see here, but on the recording tab, we can check multiple audio tracks. Now, your recording format might be set to .flv. I think what it says here is as soon as you check audio track 2, that certain formats such as FLV don't support multiple tracks, but MP4 does. MP4 is kind of the standard for video right now, so you should change the recording format to MP4 here, and then you can enable as many audio tracks as you want. So if you want 2 audio tracks, just have 1 and 2 checked here, and then go ahead and hit apply and OK. Now, before it's going to work completely, what we need to do here is to click on one of the wheels down here, so like mic aux or desktop audio. You can click on the settings wheel and then go down to advanced audio properties. And here you can see the different audio channels. So I have desktop audio, that would be like your game audio usually, and it's currently going out to tracks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and my mic is going to tracks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all we need to do is reduce these down to 2 different tracks. So I'm going to uncheck 1, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the mic, and uncheck 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the desktop audio. Now when we click OK, desktop audio will be going out to track 1, mic aux will be going out to track 2, and how we'll prove that this is working is I'll just open up some music by Kevin MacLeod. Let's see here, just something kind of random. I like the track Hard Boiled. And now we can start recording. So at the end of this video, I'll take the recorded footage here, put it into DaVinci Resolve, and you'll see how it comes up on 2 separate video editing tracks. So here's the .mp4 video we recorded, so I'm going to copy this in here. And let's put it down to the video editing tracks, and there you go. You can see the music levels showing in audio track 1 and the voiceover parts in audio track 2, which makes it really easy for editing at this point if you ever need to, say, get rid of the background music for a second, or if you want to change the audio levels in post-production. So let's just go ahead and play this back just to show recording. So at the end of this video, I'll take the recorded footage here, and that's how you would record multiple audio tracks simultaneously inside of Open Broadcaster software. So I hope you find this to be an incredibly useful trick, especially if you like to edit your videos after you've been recording for a while. I've been Chris, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in my future video content.
In this video, we're going to talk about testing your upload bandwidth speed so that we can determine what bitrate you should set for Open Broadcaster software. So here, all we're going to do is go ahead and hit their test upload speed button and run with their defaults, which is going to see how fast it takes for my computer to send certain information to their servers, which I believe it said it was in Texas. And after it gets the results, it's going to tell me how quick my upload bandwidth speed is. And we go ahead and get the results pretty much as expected, around 2.1 megabits per second for me. Now, 2.1 megabits per second is the same as saying 2100 kilobits per second, and if you recall, the bit rate in OBS is measured in kilobits per second. So, at our cap here, we have roughly 2100 kilobits per second as a potential bit rate. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull up OBS, and I'm going to pull up Settings, and let's go down here to the Encoding tab. Now, this would be for streaming specifically. Keep that in mind. You can have a higher bit rate if you are not streaming live. If you're just recording to your computer, you can have it much higher, like 4000 kilobits per second, as I have set right there. Now, 2100, as I previously mentioned, would be my theoretical maximum. However, you actually want to set the max bit rate lower than that. The reason for that is if you try to force a max upload speed, then because of the bumpiness of internet connections, you're going to have some instability in the stream. Frames will get dropped, people may experience lag, and other bad occurrences will occur. So we actually want to stream at a lower quality bitrate for the sake of consistency. Now, I've seen numbers recommending anywhere between 70 and 90% of your max, so you might be able to get away with 1800 or 1850. I would say 80% is a really good number, so I'd probably say 1700 here would be the bitrate I'd want to stream at. And that's acceptable for 720p resolution. Now, when you're testing your live streams, you can play around with the settings a bit. Just because you set it to 1700 or whatever number you have to begin with, it doesn't mean you can't increase it later if you find out that the quality of the video is too low, and it doesn't mean you can't drop it below if you find out that your frames are dropped. Now, when you are streaming your data to a server, you're going to see numbers down here, including your current bitrate as it's sending to the server, your frames per second, which is pretty much independent of the stream itself, but more to do with your video settings and the programs you're trying to stream themselves, and dropped frames. Now, dropped frames is really important. If you see more than 10% dropped frames, that probably means there's a severe issue with your stream, and a lot of the time, that just means that your bitrate's set way too high because your internet connection is struggling to keep up with your demands. Now right here, you'll notice that the bitrate is actually really low, and that's because I'm doing a static image without constant bitrate set currently. Normally when you stream, you actually are going to enable constant bitrate in the encoding tab. So I'll go ahead and do that here, and I'll show you the difference after I hit apply. And let's go ahead and preview the stream again. And this should jump up roughly to 1700 really quick. 1700, 1800, somewhere around there. It's not perfectly consistent, but it gets as close as it can. When you have constant bitrate set, it helps to smooth out your stream to different sites like Twitch or YouTube. Now, right here, if we were actually streaming live to the service and we saw this number with the green light there, then that would be good. Now, if you start to see yellow or red a lot, and this also is going to be something you see a lot of the time when you also have dropped frames, that probably means that there's an issue. If it starts to turn yellow or red, the first place to check is your bitrate within OBS. I'm not going to go into troubleshooting your internet connection here. It can be other things. Just check your bitrate first with OBS specifically, and from there do your standard troubleshooting for internet connections beyond that. So once again, the website you want to go to test your upload speed is testmy.net/upload. If you don't like this service specifically or you want to get a second opinion, there are other websites you can easily find through Google or your search engine of choice. But this is the one I decided to use for this video, and it seems to work very well. So that's all for this video of testing your upload speed for OBS. In the next two videos, we're going to be talking about streaming to YouTube and streaming to Twitch TV. See you then. In this video, we're going to be discussing how to stream to YouTube using Open Broadcaster software. To start things off, make sure that you have a scene that you actually want to stream, and you've created a separate profile for your live stream. And before you actually worry about putting in the stream information, preview your video, make sure it's what you want. In this case, I'm just going to be streaming the Microsoft Firefox start page, which is basically Google search, I believe. Before we start streaming, we gotta go and customize the settings though. We have talked about what most of the settings do in Open Broadcaster software, but we haven't really spent any time to put them into practice. On the Broadcast Settings tab, we're gonna find most of the stuff we need to worry about here. So it's going to be a live stream, and we have to set it to YouTube under streaming service. Primary YouTube ingest server is just fine. And we're going to get the stream key off of the YouTube website. Many times I like to have automatically save stream to file enabled so that whenever I start streaming, it's also creating a recording of the file. Keep recording if live stream stops is optional, of course. But you'll notice when you do choose a ingestion server that it will say whether or not you have optimized settings for the service you're trying to stream to. I do recommend in most cases, unless you have a good reason not to, you just hit optimize at the bottom and let OBS kind of correct some of the settings for you. In the encoding tab, we need to decide whether we're going to use constant bitrate, and we do need to set our max bitrate, as seen in the previous video where you can figure out what your max bitrate is. So for me, I'd say 1600 is really safe for my max bitrate because my max upload speed is something around 2.1 or 2.2 megabits per second. For YouTube, it's pretty important that you do use constant bitrate because the bitrate is how YouTube determines what resolutions it's actually going to be offering to the viewers. Although your streamer video may only really require a few hundred kilobits per second because it's only streaming static images or stuff that's barely moving around because you're not in a game, using this will ensure that if it receives, say, 2000 kilobits per second, it's going to have the 720p resolution that you're looking for, or higher than that if you have a really good internet connection.
If you want people to be able to hear you, make sure you have your microphone set. And then we're going to hit OK. Come back here. Make sure you test your audio devices before you actually start streaming. Over here, you'll have your speakers, whether your computer's playing any kind of sounds. And here you'll be able to see the microphone as you're talking. But now, before we can actually go and start streaming, we got to open YouTube up. So I'm going to pull up the page here for the live dashboard. You get to your live dashboard by going to Creator Studio, which you can get there by clicking the icon in the top right corner of YouTube, and go to the live streaming. This is in beta, this new version of the service, but it's a lot simpler to set up. So we'll scroll down on the page a bit. We see the name of our stream, the description. It's locked into public because it is a live stream. And you can see a category for the kind of video you're doing. But at the bottom, we have the important information. We have the stream key, which is going to be right below here, and the server URL, which is not going to be necessary to set because OBS already has the primary YouTube ingestion server set as one of its settings. So we're going to reveal this and grab the stream key. And once you have it copied, go ahead and paste it into OBS in the Broadcast Settings tab. Under playpath/stream key, primary YouTube ingestion server is generally what you're going to have here. Hit apply. OK. Stop preview. And now all we need to do for the stream to start and the video to start playing within YouTube is to hit start streaming within OBS. And if everything goes good, you're going to see a green bitrate over here, no dropped frames ideally, and it's going to be saying live and record and the timestamp. Now we just wait for the video to start here and we are good to go. If it's receiving the data, you're going to see stream starting at the top. Get ready, live any second. And here we go. We're about to be live with our Firefox web page. Awesome. So that's all there is to streaming to YouTube. Of course, this looks really low quality, and that's because we haven't increased the video quality to 720 HD. This should refresh here, and now it's much, much clearer. So that's what people want to be able to see on the viewer's end. In the next video, we'll be talking about how to stream to Twitch using a very similar process. Till then. In this video, we're going to be discussing streaming to Twitch TV using Open Broadcaster software. Now we're going to be following a similar process as to YouTube. So first we got to check our settings first. And primarily we're going to be dealing with encoding and broadcast settings. Under broadcast settings, of course, and rather obviously, we're going to need to change the stream service over to Twitch TV. And of course, you'll only see all this information if you have live stream selected whenever you want to stream live. Now, before we start streaming, we're going to need to choose a server from the list of Twitch TV servers. Usually, you want one that's relatively close to where you live to reduce ping. So for me, something like Texas or New York would be pretty good. So we'll just set New York. Now at the bottom, it's going to give you some optimized Twitch settings, which usually would mean X264 encoding, higher audio bit rates so that your sound is good, and a 2-second keyframe interval. Unless you have a good reason not to have those changes, I do recommend you hit optimize, OK, and let OBS fix that for you. Just like YouTube, you can choose to minimize your network impact if there's other people on the network actively using the internet. And you can automatically take your stream and have it recording to a file while you're streaming, which is something I normally do. So we're going to hit apply on all that. Check our encoding settings. Generally, if you're going to be streaming, you want to have use CBR checked on the encoding tab because it reduces the amount of issues that your live viewers may have, such as stream lag or spikes. Make sure you've calculated your max bitrate using an internet service and set the max bitrate in OBS to something around 70 or 80% of your overall bandwidth. That's around what most people recommend. So with this, we can hit OK. Just note that Twitch TV does recommend you have a 160 kbps audio bitrate, which it's already applied for us right there. So now all we need to do is get the stream key and start streaming to Twitch. So on the Twitch TV website, go ahead and go to Twitch TV /your username /dashboard. I believe that Twitch TV /dashboard without the username in there also works, and that'll bring you to your dashboard page. On the live tab, you'd be able to see your video as it's currently being live streamed here. You can change the title of your broadcast, which you should do so that your viewers actually understand what they're watching. And if you have a game title, which generally is the case when you're streaming to Twitch, let's be honest, it's meant for games, then you would set that here, and that can help associate your stream with a specific video game when people are looking it up. Now, the last thing we need to do here before we start streaming to Twitch is to go to our Stream Key tab. Now, on the Stream Key tab, what we got to do is hit Show Key, which will give you a dialog box. Never show this key on stream or give it to anyone, and that's because it's basically like your channel streaming password. So I'm going to hit I understand and copy the information it gives me, which is a long key, back into OBS, and then we're set up to start streaming. I'm going to cut that part out, though. So now that I got the key copied, I'm going to go back over to OBS, and in the stream key, if any, right-click, paste. We have the stream key in, so we can hit apply, and now we have the option to start streaming. So we're going to start streaming, I believe still our Firefox web browser. So now if we go ahead and check Twitch out and go to our live page, we should see the video with a slight delay, of course, for the stream information getting there, to show in our live preview window, and all of our followers on Twitch are going to be notified that we have started streaming. So we're just waiting for the video to go and open up here. We can see that it's live up here in the top right, but it will take a little while for the data to be received. You can check, of course, stream configuration quality. You want that to be excellent. Back in OBS, we can see our bitrate. If we have constant bitrate, then we would expect this to be approximately equal to our maximum bitrate, which is good. And we want it to be green, and we want 0 dropped frames if possible. A few isn't too bad. More than 10% and you're running into issues. And there we go. We have Firefox streaming to Twitch TV. Now, Firefox, of course, not normally the program you'd be using. Generally, it's for gaming. But now viewers will be able to come in and watch your stream, so you should be good to go. See you in the next video.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I want to show you guys how we can add widgets such as donation goals and an alert box to our stream in OBS. So there are multiple sources you can use in order to tie in those kind of widgets to Twitch. The ones we'll be showing in this video are from streamlabs.com, which is a very popular service for getting these kind of widgets. Now, in order to copy the widget into OBS, we need to add them as browser sources. So in the bottom left where you see sources, we want to right click and do add browser, and we can give it a name. So let's say the first one is donation goals, and then we're going to need a URL here. So to get the URL, we need to go to our streamlabs.com dashboard. If you don't already have an account, you can log in and sign up with your Twitch account very easily. And once you're logged in, it'll put you at this dashboard. So you want to scroll down on the left side to where it says widgets, and then we have alert box and goals. So for goals, I will hit the plus button, and we want a donation goal specifically. So I will left click on that, and you'll see widget URL over here. We want to copy and paste that into OBS. So you can see here now that that donation goal is showing in the top left hand corner. If you need to change some details about it, like the width and height, you can double click it and go back into it. So maybe I say just that it's 180p resolution now, so it takes up the full size of my screen. And you don't have to keep it up there in the top. You could easily do something like drag it down here to the bottom left, or shrink its size by left click and dragging on one of the edges. But it actually looks like it's better when you have the width and height shrunken down, so I'm gonna return that, and let's stretch it out. And maybe we just put this in the bottom left hand corner. But if you want to manipulate any of the details here, such as the fonts or the color, then you go back to the Streamlabs page in order to manipulate it. So here, if I scroll down on the donation goal page, we can see some details about the goal. So days remaining, current amount, goal amount. Maybe I want to manipulate those kinds of things. So down at the bottom of that widget page, we can see settings for the goal, also into donation goal if we want to set a new one. And you can see colors for the goal, font types, and you can also switch to a condensed layout if the standard one is taking a little too much space. But let's say that we wanted to create a completely new goal. So I'll just end the old one here. and we'll create a new one. So the goal name will be stream donations, I suppose, and goal amount, let's just say it's 100. I believe that defaults to US dollars, and starting amount, we'll say 0, end after, I don't know, a year, and then we'll hit start donation goal. So once you've done that, it should update inside of OBS as well. So we can see stream donations there, 365 days to go, and the goal is $100 there. But we can also change stuff like the background color. So let's say we want to change the background color and make it stand out a bit more. We can left click on here and change the color to something, I don't know, like a red. And once you hit save settings, it's going to update there inside of OBS as well. It just takes a second to refresh. So that's all well and good. So in order for your stream viewers to donate in a way where they can actually see the donations appear on screen, you're going to have to go over to My Account and Donation Settings on Streamlabs and find your Streamlabs donation link. So this will tie into other services such as PayPal, and you can also add in Strix, I believe it is, and a few others to basically give your viewers options of how they can donate to you. All of those will be processed through this link. So we need to paste this link where it says streamlabs.com/your username over to your Twitch page. So for instance, if I go over to my page, twitch.tv/darkskeleton, we can see down here there is a little option here for support the stream, and that's where I've pasted in the link. It's currently using the old Streamlabs link. So in order to change this, I want to click on Edit Panels, and here you can see the links that each of the panels will have, as well as the panel title and a image if you want to include that. So I'm going to change this link here to streamlabs.com/username, and then you can hit submit, and then whenever that link is clicked, that's going to be where your viewers are able to donate. Optionally, adding in a description or an image here would be a good way of making it more interesting for them to actually want to interact there and consider donating. So you can do that on your own time. I'm going to hit submit here, and then we turn off edit panels, and if I hover over this little image here, it'll now have the link for the donation, and when anyone decides to click on that, this would be the page that they go to. So you can see a preview of the donation, what it would look like on stream, how much the person wants to donate, and whatever the donation message is going to be. Now, let's show another example then. We'll do the alert box. So the alert box is when an event happens on stream, like a follow or donation, and you want it to show to all the viewers that so-and-so has followed or so-and-so has donated. Well, you can come down here, you can see all of the check boxes for what events should be tracked. You can leave them all as default if you want. Once again, we'll copy the widget and we'll go add a new browser source. So in OBS, I'm gonna right click, do add browser, and we'll say alerts. And then for the URL, I'm going to copy it in. And you'll notice that it won't constantly show anything on screen because it only shows stuff when an event actually happens. So a lot of people will position this kind of in the center of the screen. And if you want to test it before your stream is running, you simply need to hit one of these test buttons. So let's say test merch, and then it will say like, oh, John bought a t-shirt. Or you can do test donation. So-and-so has donated so much money. And you'll notice there's also like animated GIFs over here. The text animates, and these are settings we can manipulate as well. So test follow if you want to see how that looks. So test follow if you want to see how that looks. Okay, so you may have noticed that in the bottom left-hand corner, the test donation triggered the stream donations to go up, but just restarting OBS was able to fix that. Not sure why that bug happened. But anyway, if you want to customize the Twitch alerts, such as changing the sound effect that will play, you just come down here once again on the alert box page, and you can customize it for all of the events. So if you want to change the GIF for it follows, you would just come down here to GIFs, hit change media. You can pick one of the stock files, which are out of the box by default. So for instance, we can select this corgi here, hit select, and that changes it for that. Sound effects, down here where it says sound, you just click and change the media. You can do a URL, or you can upload a file from your computer. And then you have options for font. You can also add in alert variations if you want multiple possibilities, so it won't always be the same GIF, for instance. And once again, you can customize it for all of your different events, so you can kind of get in here and play around with it for a while. If using the main alert takes up too much space on the screen, then maybe you want it to be a long width but short height alert. And that's basically the idea of how you add in the widgets. So I've shown you how to do donation goals and alert boxes, which are probably two of the most common ones. But you can see, obviously, on the widgets list of Streamlabs, they have a lot of other options. They're all pretty much added the same way. So just remember that you need to use browser sources to do this. And for many of the options, they'll have test buttons. So just hit test before you go live and customize the settings to your liking. So I've been Chris. Thanks for watching this brief tutorial on how to set up stream alerts and stream donations inside of OBS. I hope it's been helpful for you guys, and I'll see you guys in my future video content.
Hello everyone, Chris here, and today I'm going to show you a very simple process to install plugins into open broadcasting software. Now there's a good chance of Googling this because the answer is so obvious and easy that it would trick you into thinking that there's more steps, but there's really not. So once you have a plugin which you download off the internet, of course, you got to open up the zip file and drag and drop your files into this Program Files OBS plugins folder or directory, whatever you want to call it. And from there, you've basically installed it. Then all you have to do is boot up open broadcasting software. I'm kidding you not. That's all you have to do. And to confirm that it is properly installed, after restarting the program, go to plugins, and you'll see these different plugins here showing that you have successfully installed what you needed to in that folder, and that these plugins are going to have the functionality inside of OBS as intended. That's really all there is to it. There's no other step. There's not a install next installer function or program or anything like that. It's just go to OBS plugins folder, drag and drop your plugins in. That's it. Nothing else to it. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this not so much useful, but more clearing something up. I hope it did clear out for you. And if you want to see something else OBS related, just leave me a comment down in the comments section. Thank you again for watching. I've been Chris, and I will catch you all next time.
In this video, we're going to be talking about how to use the simple scene switcher plugin within OBS. Now, you'll remember from the last video that we discussed how to install the plugin, but we didn't touch on how to actually use it. So in the settings menu, when you have Simple Scene Switcher properly installed, Scene Switcher will appear at the bottom of the list. And what the Scene Switcher does is whenever you have a window selected actively that is listed on this list, it's automatically going to change the scene within OBS to whatever you associate with that window. So in order for this to work, we're going to have to add windows to this list, and we can do that by clicking on this drop-down menu, which will give us a list of all of the different windows that are open on our computer currently that we can use for the scene switcher. Games would also be included on this list. So for instance, we're going to use the Mozilla Firefox start page. We're going to associate that with OBS Stream Test, and we're going to add that to our list. Next, I'm going to add the Windows Photo Viewer, which currently has an image of a Java icon loaded up, and I'm going to associate that with OBS Stream Test 2, image in parentheses. Of course, these streams are ones that I manually created in the main OBS window. So we're going to add that there. Now at this point, whenever I have the Windows Photo Viewer open, Stream Test 2 is going to be the scene. Whenever I have Firefox open and actively selected, it's going to be OBS Stream Test 1. In order for this to work, we have to have the plugin running. One way is to just hit start here. Another way is to set a hotkey for starting it, and you can hit this hotkey while you're actively recording if you want to start the scene switcher. And you can also select a default scene, which OBS Scene Switcher will switch to whenever you don't have one of these windows actively selected. However, I'm going to leave that blank for right now, so don't switch. In the Scene Switcher settings, whenever you have an automatic default scene when an active window isn't selected, it's going to check every so many milliseconds, and you set that right here if you need to change it. 300 is usually just fine. And if you want the plugin to always be running whenever you open OBS, just check this Start at Launch if possible option. Now hit Apply to make sure all the settings save, and hit OK. Now before I demonstrate the scene switcher, I want to show you the scenes we have first right here manually. This is Stream Test 2, which has a centered image of the Windows Photo Viewer here, just a Java logo on screen. And then Stream Test 1 is our classy Mozilla Firefox start page. So we set F12 to be the hotkey to start the scene switcher, which I'm going to hit right now. So the scene switcher is now activated.
And without clicking on a different scene here from the list, which is how you do it without this plugin, I'll simply click between my windows, and as they become the actively selected ones, OBS Scene Switcher is automatically going to switch for me inside of the recording program. So here we go. You see no cursor on the scenes list. I'm going to click on the Windows Photo Viewer window, and it instantly switches without me having to do anything else. Now I'm going to click on the Firefox window, and it switches. You also notice it has a pretty cool fade effect. I'll click on the Photo Viewer, back to Firefox, back to the Photo Viewer. Now this plugin is going to be most useful for you when you're going to be recording and you want to show multiple windows over the course of a single recording, because then you don't have to worry about repositioning your window because you've already done it inside of the scene. You don't have to click on OBS because it's doing it for you automatically in the background. And it can also be really helpful if you're going to be doing a live stream and then you just want to have a I'm on break image by clicking off the main window and clicking onto something else. So that's all to the simple scene switcher. It's a very easy to use and useful plugin that you can get off of the OBS project forums. Till the next video, see you then. Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'd like to take a little bit of a look at the two different versions of OBS, Open Broadcaster software, and give you a visual comparison between the two. We have the classic OBS over here on the left, and OBS Studio on the right, which I first used on a Linux platform, but now also available on Windows. And for the most part, the two applications do about the same thing, but they do present your options and settings in a little bit of a different manner. So over here on the left, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, scenes and sources, basically being able to add different items to your screen, and for every screen or scene that you want to present, you can create new ones over here. It's the exact same in OBS Studio, just adding a couple more buttons in the bottom for you to have quicker access to the functions rather than having to right-click to get things done. One difference that is actually a little bit more noticeable on the front page of your OBS programs is that in the original OBS, you do have the mic and the speaker sounds over here, but you don't have immediate access to change which devices those actually are. However, in OBS Studio, you do. So if you wanted to change the microphone, all that you would need to do is click over here on this little button over here, go to Properties, and change it to the device which you want to record from. And that's a little bit easier than having to go to the Settings menu in the original OBS, which basically is going to mean Settings up here at the top, and then Audio to pick a microphone out. So let's see, speaking of the settings menus, let's actually go ahead and compare the two. Obviously in the original OBS it's straight up there in the menu, but it's not actually a option in the top menu of OBS Studio. Instead, it's been moved to File and then Settings. Alternatively, in the bottom right hand corner there is a button which will bring you to the exact same page, so let's go ahead and bring that up. And you can see that for the most part, pretty similar once again, OBS Studio being a little bit more visual with the large icons and text, and a few less categories that are necessary. But across all of these categories, you can more or less find the same kinds of settings. So stream, for instance, choosing out a streaming service like Twitch TV or YouTube that you want to stream to is basically going to be about the same as broadcast settings over here. Once again, being able to choose the streaming service, Twitch or YouTube, pretty similar. Encoding kind of corresponds with output, being able to set the video rate, and in the original OBS, max bitrate once again defaults to 1000, which is probably far too low for streaming, but you can always boost that up just by setting 3000 or something like that. One major difference between the two apps here, though, is that when you're recording in OBS Studio, you actually have the ability to change the recording quality to be different than the streaming quality. Whereas in the original OBS, if you say 3000 kilobits per second, it's pretty much going to stream at 3000 kilobits per second to both your online service, Twitch TV, and to your computer if you're recording at the same time. So you can actually change that so that it's different for streaming and recording within OBS Studio, and that's pretty cool. In audio, basically the same settings. You can choose your microphone in a different location. And you still have the ability to enable push to talk over here. I think this setting for push to talk is actually somewhere down there. It's definitely in the original OBS. One of the more important things, of course, is going to be hotkeys. You can see actually in OBS Studio there's a few more hotkeys available to you. Notably, the ability to transition, and we'll be talking about studio mode in a second here, which kind of corresponds with the scene switcher in the original OBS. But the nice thing about studio mode is that you can see a visual preview of, well, the scenes that you can be switching to. So let's just go ahead and pull that up here. Just know that in the scene switcher for the original OBS, basically you have to do everything through hotkeys, test things beforehand, and you really don't have a preview window to see the scene you're going to be switching to, because OBS Original only really lets you see the one scene that you're currently working in, not the ones that you might be switching to. So if we're in studio mode in the new version of OBS Studio, probably the main reason it's called Studio actually, we have a preview of one scene and the one that we would be switching to. So you can select the scene down here in scenes, and you can see the starting scene and the end up scene, and you can transition between them by hitting the transition button. Alternatively, you hit the hotkey that you set for transition. But the major advantage here is that if you have someone, say, doing the live video cuts in the background, and they don't want to mess things up, basically they want to make sure that whatever they're previewing is actually what they want to show on screen, then having it visually display here, both with the live screen and the switch to screen at the same time, is kind of a nice bonus of OBS Studio. But other than that, it basically works the same. You can definitely switch scenes inside of the original Open Broadcaster software. It's just a little bit less full-featured, I guess you could say. But aside from that, more or less the two versions of the program do roughly the same thing, and it's kind of up to you which one you want to use. If you don't even need the studio mode feature, then it may just come down to visual appearances. Maybe you like the original menu where it's just kind of a list over here on the left, as opposed to having these icons which don't really match up with a Windows interface. But yeah, I hope that gives you a rough idea of some of the differences between the two apps, visually and functionally. I've been Chris, thank you for watching. If you found this video useful, feel free to check out my Patreon account, and until my next video, I'll see you. Hello everybody, in this video we're going to be going over OBS Studio's interface and compare it a bit with OBS Classic. So one of the main things you'll notice is that regardless of whether or not we've hit a preview mode button, there actually is no preview mode button in OBS Studio. The screen is going to be displaying over here. I do have the display capture turned off simply because, well, do you really want to look at this endless chain of OBS Studio windows in this video? But it's always previewing, regardless of if you're recording or not. So that's something to take note of. Something that's basically the same as in OBS Classic is the scenes and sources. So scenes is referring to everything you see in this box all at once. Each individual scene contains any number of sources, and those sources serve essentially as the views or the items that are going to display on this screen for that OBS video. So just like before, you can add things like images, different media sources, text onto the screen, or you can put a video capture device, which would be like a webcam. Same general idea there. You just set up your sources and you apply it to a scene. And that's all well and good. Over here with the mixer, you have audio settings. So originally over on the right hand side, there was a section where you could turn the volume up or down on a mic, and you could also mute it. You can still do the same thing with this bar here, and you can mute it, but an extra option which has been added is the ability to change the mics on the fly by clicking on the settings icon and going to properties. And they've also got an option up here for advanced audio properties by hitting the mixer settings icon. Not something you're generally going to need to play around with, but you can manually set the volume here to a specific percent if you'd rather use that over a bar, among some other stuff. Something kind of new to OBS Studio is the idea of scene transitions basically built into the main screen interface. You could do scene transitions before in, let's just say, classic OBS. But here you can actually fade between different screens, different scenes on the fly by going into what's called studio mode. And we'll touch a little bit more on this in another video, but the idea is you click on basically the scenes that you want to transition to, and you'll have one scene over here and another one on the right. And when you hit transition, you cut between them immediately using transitions such as a 300 millisecond fade or an immediate cut. So that is actually pretty useful, especially when you want to play around with multiple scenes inside of OBS. And then, just like always, you have start streaming and start recording on the right. The preview mode is gone because it's always previewing the footage as long as you are actually displaying the sources. And you can access the settings menu by hitting here. Or, once again, you can go up to the file menu. It's a little bit different, but same basic idea as the original OBS. So that's a rough rundown of the initial main interface of OBS Studio. I hope you found this video useful, and until my next one, I'll see you then. Hello everybody, in this video we're going to be talking about how to do scene transitions inside of OBS Studio, which is one of the things I believe this version of the app does a bit better than the original. And the idea here is that whenever you have one scene, you may want to switch to a different scene on the fly. Now, at the most basic level, you could simply click between the two different scenes, but in reality, if you're recording something, screencasting, whatever, you're probably not going to be able to just come in here and manually do this, and it would just be a mess. So one thing you can actually do is to set hotkeys. That's the probably basic solution. And if you go up to File and Settings, we can find the hotkeys menu over here. And you can see that for each scene you've set up, they will allow you to set 3 different hotkeys: show image, hide image, and the one we're actually looking for that's relevant to us, switch to scene. Currently I have it set to Shift 1 and Shift 2. So what we could do is, while we were recording, we set up hotkeys that aren't relevant to the recording itself, something that would be a little strange to just hit randomly. And we can just hit those keys and immediately transition between 2 different scenes. Now, another thing we can do is actually use the studio mode, and this doesn't really change how we transition, but it allows us to see a preview of what we're going to be transitioning to before we actually do it. So whatever's on the right is what's currently showing in the video, and whatever's on the left is what we're going to transition to. So if we want to change what we're going to transition to, while we're in studio mode, we just click on that scene, and we could hit transition, which will move that the selected transition target over to the right in the live mode, and it puts whatever scene we had before back over here on the left, where we can transition back to it again. So that kind of thing would be useful if you're, for instance, going on a break mode if you were live streaming. But you get the idea there. And then, of course, you can change the different scene transitions. Basically, cut and fade are the basic ideas. Cut is instant. Fade is going to transition over a period of time, which is the milliseconds amount. And yeah, as you can see here, you don't have to actually select the scene transition in the bottom right. You can simply click between them. But the optimal way to do this, really, I do believe, is to have hotkeys set. You don't want to be looking at the OBS Studio interface unless for some reason the person who's recording the video is also not the one managing OBS Studio. Like if you have a control room guy in the background. I mean, I don't think most people can have that level of a production, but general idea there. So yeah, set up hotkeys. That's my recommendation. And then you can simply switch between them in non-studio mode by hitting Shift 1 and Shift 2, or you can go back into studio mode. The thing is, though, if you are in studio mode, hitting the hotkeys will only queue up the transition. It won't actually put it live. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you want to do the final transition, you can hit the transition button there. or you can go up to File Settings and look for the hotkey to do a studio mode transition, which would be basically right here. Transition, quick transition cut, or quick transition fade, which is an alternate way you can do it. For instance, I'll just demonstrate it here really quick. We'll make this Shift 3, Shift 4, Shift 5, hit apply, go back here. So we want to do the default transition, which is a fade, and it will fade to there with Shift F3. If we want to do, we bound cut to Shift 4, so we can do immediate cuts. And we can also do fade with F5. And we can also do a fade with Shift 5. Now, Shift 5 will always be a fade, but Shift 3, just a flat out transition. That depends on what's selected down here in the bottom right for scene transitions. So that's going to be all for this video on how to set up and use transitions inside of OBS Studio. I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you in my next video. Hello everybody, in this video I'm going to show you one of the cool features of OBS Studio, and that is Remux recordings, which you can find in the file menu of OBS Studio. So what Remux recordings does for you is it allows you to take any previous recording, like these raw footage files, and convert it into another type of video. So over here I have these files saved as .mp4, which is the file extension, the file format that I like to edit in. But you can take those files and basically remux them or change them into a different format using this tool just by going to the Remux tool, basically choosing a target file as the output, and we can save it as .flv, .mp4, .mov, .mkv, etc. So one of the most useful examples that you could use this Remux recording thing for is to change one of your file formats from a format which may not work, especially in editors like Adobe Premiere, into a format that you can actually use. So it's almost like going online and getting one of those file converters, but having it built straight into OBS Studio, which is great. So here I'm going to resave it as a .flv. What I would probably normally do is if I accidentally had it saved as a .flv, which is the default for OBS and OBS Studio, I can remux that into a .mp4. So now when we go ahead with this video file on the desktop, right click it and go to properties, we can see it's a .flv file. And .flv, as I'm explaining, cannot work within Adobe Premiere, so we can change that back to an MP4 if we wanted to, and I guess I might as well for demo purposes. Go ahead, remux that, and there, now we have it in yet another format. Really cool tool that exists in OBS Studio. I don't believe you can actually get it in OBS Classic, at least not without plugins. So definitely check that out if you are going to go ahead and try OBS Studio over OBS Classic. So that's it for this video. I've been Chris, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Hello everyone, in this video we're going to be talking about setting up a recording inside of OBS Studio, including the output path and the output format. So in order to play around with the settings in Studio version of OBS, we need to go to the File menu, Settings, and then from there go to Output. Here we have settings for streaming, including the video bitrate. And down here we have recording path, recording quality, which notably you can change to be a different setting than the streaming bitrate, and the output format. So simplest would be the output format. It usually defaults to .flv, but you can change that to .mp4, .mov, or any of these other formats. What I would suggest is that you pick one that you know is compatible with your video editor, so that when you are done recording, you don't have to play around with any conversion tools or anything like that. But if you do happen to record to the wrong tool, the wrong type, you can use Remux recordings, as you can find in one of my other videos in this course. So back in the settings menu, output, the recording path. Now, when you're talking about the recording path, you're talking about the folder, the directory that you're going to be storing it in. So here I have my video files going to C drive /videos/raw. Typically, you'd probably put it in C drive /users/your username, assuming we're talking about Windows OBS. And yeah, wherever you want to put your files, that's fine. just note that what we're talking about here is the path of the directory, not the file name itself. Now you might be wondering why you can only set the recording path here. It is a little bit weird, but when you set up the recording path, it's not customizing the file name. If you actually want to change how it outputs the file name, what you need to go do is go over to the Advanced tab, and you'll see Recording File Name Formatting, which by default is pretty much year, month, day, hour, minutes, seconds, so date, time, and the CC just means 4-year digits. So we could delete this and override it with tutorial as the file name, or video game, or the name of the game you're playing, whatever you want it to be. But this is the default file name formatting. It works pretty much just fine, so just make a note of that. And it's completely optional whether or not you want to change the file name formatting. But that's where you set the recording path, Advanced tab for file name formatting, and you can change from MP4 or FLV to any kind of recording format as you want. Also, just once again, note that if you want to change the recording quality for recording versus streaming, you can do that. So while it might output to the stream in 3000 bit rate, 3000 kilobits per second, you can change it to, say, lossless quality, which would be a tremendous file size for the recording itself. So that's all for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Hello everyone, in this video we're going to talk about scene collections in OBS Studio. So scenes are something that OBS has always had. They're basically the box that contains all of the sources or objects that you're displaying on the screen at one certain time. However, in OBS Classic, you had a list of scenes and that was it. All of your scenes were on one list. But in OBS Studio, you actually have access to what's called scene collections. So instead of having just profiles, you have profiles and scene collections. So we can go to scene collection new and type in, well, let's just say collection 2 to have completely new scenes to work with in our next OBS video. Now, why this would be useful is if you want to switch between scenes in one video or one recording or live stream, but you don't want to have every single scene that you've ever created on that list. So using scene collections, we can add in new scenes with individual sources that are only relevant to the recording we're trying to do. So if I go put in scene, let's say the break scene, and then maybe we have some sources here. So, I mean, let's just grab the images again, why not? And then we have that break scene and our regular scene, but those are the only ones we need for our video, at least the one that we're recording at the same time. Then it's much more manageable when we want to switch between them using just transition hotkeys or the studio mode by basically only having 2 on the list rather than 10 or 15. So this is just one way of organizing your work within OBS. It's very helpful if you're going to be having a lot of different types of videos and you want to keep your scenes separate so that you can transition to them easier. Since you don't have all of the extra fluff in your way. So that's the general idea of scene collections. Still, when it comes to recording profiles, you can customize those individually, but scene collection does add an extra layer inside of OBS Studio over OBS Classic. So I hope this gives you a good idea of how scene collections work within OBS Studio. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to add noise suppression and noise gate filters inside of OBS Studio 17.0.0, one of the newer versions of OBS. So if I stop talking for a second and we look at this mic/aux, you'll notice it goes completely silent. That's what the noise gate does, and the noise suppression removes some of the background noise that's more quiet than the microphone talking. But how we actually add these is to go over to the little settings wheel on our microphone in the mixer and click on filters. Now worth noting is that when you actually set up these audio filters for that microphone, it's going to apply across all your different scenes, so you don't need to do it for every single scene, which is nice. But here in this list, you can see I have noise suppression and noise gate set up, but how you actually add them, bottom left hand corner, you click add, and you can choose noise suppression, noise gate, as well as gain. Now, gain would make your microphone basically more loud. It amplifies all the sound that's importing, or being recorded rather. But if you want to reduce the sound, noise suppression and noise gate, when you add those, you're going to see these settings down here in the bottom right. So suppression level, the further you move it to the left, the more it's going to remove some of the background noise. And you can just play around with the settings until you get most of the white noise in the background gone. And noise gate will basically prevent your microphone from recording unless it reaches a certain threshold. So in this case, it won't open until it reaches negative 26 decibels, and it won't close until it reaches negative 32 decibels. So as long as it gets this loud, it'll stay open. It'll open up, and it won't close until it drops below this level. Now for attack time, when it's opening, this is how long it will take to get fully open. So it's kind of a fade in transition. Hold time, as long as you are staying above the open threshold, it will keep recording. But if you drop below closed threshold, it'll give you this long before it actually closes the microphone recording, or begins to close the microphone recording rather. So that's a 1/5 of a second right there. And then once it determines that you haven't been talking, at least at this audio level, for 200 milliseconds, it'll start doing the release, which is where basically the recording fades out and it goes back to a state where it's not recording anything. And by default, that takes 150 milliseconds. You can change any of these settings, but I find that the default settings work pretty well. So if you add noise suppression and noise gate into your microphone inside of OBS Studio, you should be able to get a better sounding audio as long as, so if you add in noise suppression and noise gate to your audio recording inside of OBS, it should improve the sound quality you're getting out of it. Though that said, nothing's going to replace having a room with isolation foam or anything like that. But this should help you out if you're in a particularly noisy environment. So I've been Chris, thanks for watching this OBS video, and hopefully I'll see you guys in my future video content.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this short tutorial we're going to be covering Audacity and the basics of how to use it. So what is Audacity? Audacity is an audio editing program which you can use to edit audio that's already been recorded, or to record audio inside the program to modify it in whatever ways you'd like to, by generating different effects or maybe removing some of the background noise, things of that nature. So in many ways, you could compare Audacity directly to a video editor, except without the video. It's for audio. So I'm going to go ahead here and just record a little bit of audio for us to go ahead and work with. You do this by selecting the microphone from this menu. You can choose any microphone you have plugged in, and then go ahead and hit the record button. So let's go ahead and do that here. You can see that as I'm talking, it's basically picking up the sound waves and converting that into digital data. So now if I play it back, we should hear exactly what I was hearing a second ago. So let's go ahead and do that here. You can see that as I'm talking, it's basically picking up the sound waves and converting that into digital data. So not too bad. If you were listening very closely, you may have noticed that there was a little bit of background noise from the microphone, and also a clicking sound at the end. So one of the things that you would want to do if you're creating video, or really if you're recording any kind of audio for any reason, is if you can't remove the basically the extra background noise before it hits the microphone alone by basically having a better physical environment, you would want to use Audacity to remove some of that nasty background noise so that the final product sounds a little crisper. So let's see, right here we have a section where it's just nothing but a little bit of background noise. I'll go ahead and play it back for us. Actually, that might have not been the best example, because you can hear me breathing, and that's not exactly background noise, but here at the end we'll definitely see it. So all it is some really low, quiet, static noise. But what I'm going to do to modify this is go up to the effects menu and use the noise reduction tool to basically select this profile as something we want to remove all across this clip of audio by getting the noise profile. Then to select the whole clip, filter some of this background noise out, hit OK, and that should give us a higher quality finished product. So get noise profile, and now that we've gotten that, I'm going to select the whole clip by hitting Control A, go back up to Effect, Noise Reduction, and then for step 2, I'm going to leave it at its defaults. You can increase the amount of noise reduction, but in most cases 12 is plenty, and sensitivity, not going to worry about that too much. So go ahead and hit OK, and you'll notice that the audio levels on this track have actually changed. Notably, at the end, it's almost impossible to hear any of the background noise because it's been reduced dramatically. So let's go ahead and play the whole thing back again. So let's go ahead and do that. Here you can see that as I'm talking, it's basically picking up the sound waves and converting that into digital data. So if you're like me and you're creating YouTube videos, that's definitely one of the most useful functions in Audacity. But you can also create other effects. So for instance, let's go ahead and add reverb to the audio clip. So that's basically where it gives you the illusion that you're in some really large room that echoes a lot. So add reverb. So as you can see, there's a lot of different parameters to edit for this effect, but I'm going to go ahead and leave them at the default here. We don't want to get too much into the specifics. So we've added a reverb to this clip. Let's go ahead and play it now. So let's go ahead and do that. Here you can see that as I'm talking, it's basically picking up the sound waves and converting that into digital data. Yeah, so maybe a little bit overkill on the effect, but it definitely sounds a bit like I'm in an enormous auditorium there. So that's just a couple of the ways you can use Audacity. One more thing I will mention here is that it's possible to add in extra audio tracks. So if you're creating something that is quite complex, you can have it all on different audio tracks within the same Audacity file, such as when you're creating music. Let's say you're recording different instruments from different audio sources. It would be possible to use Audacity, put them all on different tracks, modify it how you need to modify it, and then export it when you're finished. The last two things I'll leave you guys with for this introductory video is that if you want to record audio on a track that already exists within your Audacity file, you would select that track, the location you want to be recording the audio at, and hit Shift-R. Go ahead and do that here. So yeah, as you can see, it added the audio information to here. May actually want to mute this track while we do that, so that it doesn't actually play back while we're recording. And of course, if you wanted to record on a brand new track, you would just go up here to the record button, hit R, make sure you have the right microphone selected, and yeah, go ahead and record whatever you need to record. As you can see, wherever the point I have selected in the timeline is also going to be where this new track starts recording. But that's the gist of using Audacity for basic audio recording and editing, so hopefully this helped you get started using the program. It's really cool, and it's very impressive that it's a free community-supported project. So go ahead, check it out. I've been Chris, thank you for watching, and until my next video, I'll see you then.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you, as promised, on how to use Facerig Pro with OBS. So OBS is Open Broadcaster Software, if you don't already know, and it is a program which allows you to record videos and also stream them to online. So let's go ahead first by calibrating my expression a little bit. So there we go, it was kind of looking over to the left for some reason before. And what we want to do here is we want to put this Facerig tracker straight into OBS. Now, how we do that, to get started anyway, is to go over to OBS, pick a scene that we're going to be recording in, and right-click, Add, Game Capture. So I can call this Facerig, or let's say Facerig 2 in this case. And instead of capturing a full screen application, we want to capture a specific window. So we're going to be capturing facerig.exe. Now, what should happen is that it should detect the window and you should be able to see it in the preview right here. I would also suggest turning off Capture Cursor, because otherwise it'll show up basically anytime you mouse over this. So turn that off and hit OK. Now, in a way, you could say, well, it's already done, but there's actually a couple more steps if you really wanted to get working properly. So, a few things. One,
there's a good chance you're actually not going to want a background, but rather you would actually want to add a green screen to the back of it. So we can do that by changing the environment here. So if you click on environments, you can select the green screen environment, which will allow you to basically filter out all of this background and be left with only the character in your video. If you don't need to do that, then that's fine. So with, let's see, Facerig, I'm going to right click it and go to filters. So now we can filter out the green screen by clicking plus and color key, which will automatically default to green. And I would suggest bumping similarity up to about 750, 775 to get rid of most of the green border. If you go too high though, it will just kind of start removing everything. So probably right about there is right. Now, that's mostly working, except the interface is still showing, and we have this logo down here in the bottom right. If we want to remove that, I would suggest switching to Advanced UI, clicking on Hide Interface, and then that'll remove most stuff. And if you don't want the interface to accidentally show up, then you should minimize the program. Okay. Looks like before you do that, make sure that the interface has minimized. There we go. Now the last thing is this logo down here in the bottom right hand corner, and we can just cut that off by, let's see, holding Alt down, and on the left side of this box, click on one of those circles and drag it over until we no longer see the Facerig logo, if you need to do that. So there, basically, we've just gone ahead and added our character with no background into whatever else we want to record here, and we can use this in our videos or our live streams. So that's pretty much it, I think. So I've been Chris. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this video has helped you get Facerig set up in OBS, and I will see you guys in my future video content.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I wanted to talk to you guys about how you can set up your phone to be a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi audio device that you can use to record audio inside of open broadcaster software. So as you can see right now, my microphone, which is currently my phone, is being picked up inside of OBS. I can show that if we go to the properties for the mic, and you can see it's Whoa Mic Device. So what the Whoa Mic client does is it allows your computer, and there's a version for Linux as well if you don't run Windows, but it allows your computer to connect to another device. I believe the three ways it can do it are USB, which is over a physical cable, Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth, but generally I get better results when I use Bluetooth instead of Wi-Fi. So what you would do is you connect your phone as a Bluetooth audio device. So you can do that by basically pulling up the Windows Bluetooth dialog, and then you go to Add Bluetooth or Other Devices, and you would connect your phone. So in order to do that, if you're using an Android phone, you have to be in the Bluetooth tab for Android at the same time, and then you should be able to get it connected. Once you've done that, you're on the Whoa Mic client and the Whoa Mic Android or iPhone app, and you start the server on your phone, and then you connect to it through the Whoa Mic client. And you do that in the client by basically opening this up, doing connect, choosing Bluetooth, and then you choose the connected phone from the list. But you do have to make sure that the server is started on your phone or it won't be able to connect. So basically you launch the app, you have it hosting the server on your phone, and then you connect to it with the Whoa Mic client. And once you've done that, it's going to show up as an audio device on your computer. So you can see here, Whoa Mic Device. And once that's done, you can select it as your microphone inside of OBS. So that's pretty much all there is to getting your phone connected as a Bluetooth Wi-Fi device inside of OBS so that you can record audio using your phone. So that's going to be it for this video. I've been Chris, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in my future video content. Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how we can set up our phone to serve as a wireless webcam using a Android/iPhone application called IP Webcam. So there's going to be two parts of this tutorial. The first where we kind of switch into the Android app, and I'll show you how to set things up there. And the second part where we will configure things inside of Open Broadcaster software so that they tie into the browser.
Okay, so this is the part of the IP webcam tutorial where we configure IP webcam on our Android or other mobile device. So here there's a couple settings we're probably going to need to take care of before we actually start the streaming server at the very bottom of the app. So first I want to go into video preferences. When you're actually streaming the video to your computer, if you do it at the full resolution of your camera, like if I go up here and I did it at 1920 by 1080, not only would that be grossly overkill, but it actually tends to slow things down a bit. The more data streaming, the less well it's going to work in the browser. So really, if you're just doing a webcam to have like a little basically talking head in the corner of your video, you can drop it down to 800 by 600 or at least 1280 by 720 seems to work fine. Obviously, the power of your machines, it may vary a bit, but I personally am knocking it down to 800 by 600. Next up, in the main tab, you can scroll down and there will be something called audio mode. If you want to capture your audio from another application or maybe just a professional studio grade microphone in your room, you can turn off audio mode here so that you don't bother sending any of that data to the browser on your computer. So by default, it'll say enabled here. I have that set to disabled, specifically because I'm using an application called Webcam, which I'll link to another video on how to get that set up if you want to use your phone as a microphone as well, so that Webcam can be used as a microphone input in OBS rather than using IP webcam as a desktop audio input. Basically what I mean is that IP webcam, when the audio comes in the browser, that's going through your speakers, not your microphone. So if you need to add filters to the microphone, it's better to use an app like Webcam instead. So once you've done those two things, I mean, you can play around with other things, like maybe you go to effects and toggle on night vision if it's kind of dark there. But really, at least at a basic level of getting it working, you just go down to the bottom and hit Start Server. You can play around with the settings to get it to be a little bit nicer if for some reason you're having some quality issues, but this is the bare minimum you need to do. So at the bottom of the app now, depending on if you're portrait or landscape mode, it's going to say an IP address. So here for me it's saying 192.168.100.3 on port 8080. So you need to copy that web address into your browser, and then it'll give you a web interface for playing the video back in your browser so that you can use it as an input source in OBS. So now I'm going to turn it over to the computer part of this tutorial and we'll get everything set up. So once you have your video streaming inside of your IP webcam app, there's going to be an IP address at the bottom. It's going to say something like 192.168.100.3 and then colon, most likely, port 8080. So what you need to do is you need to post that exact web address into your browser up here. And it's going to give you this web page, basically. So your phone is also serving as like a web page server. And once you've done that, you can come in here and turn on Browser Video Renderer. There's also a lot of different settings you can play around with. But here we have basically the webcam running exactly as it was in the background. I don't want to move this actually because using this exact strategy of the browser webcam and browser as a video source, or the window capture rather, if you move this around it might cause some issues. So we'll just play around here. You want to change your video renderer onto browser. Flash also works. The reason we don't actually enable audio player, you can if you want to, but the audio gets picked up as a desktop audio source. So you can see here, I'm trying to capture my audio as a mic input. So as I was talking about in my previous video, using your phone as a microphone, I like to use a tool called Webcam in order to do that. And as I previously mentioned, if you want to be able to use Webcam at the same time as IP webcam, where you use IP webcam as video, you just go into the settings and you turn off audio capture for IP webcam, and then you'll be able to do Bluetooth or Wi-Fi on Webcam. So anyway, once you have those set up, where you actually are getting video input here for your IP webcam, you just need to basically
add it in as a window capture source. So I'm going to right click here, add window capture, and then we basically select this browser. We can move this up a bit. Okay, I'm actually going to scale this down. So in my actual capture, it's going to look a little weird, but hopefully for this, it'll fit. So now that we can actually target this web page, I'm going to hit OK. And what we need to do here is just crop off all the sides so that just the video is actually showing on our OBS stream. So what I'm going to do is left click on the source, and I'm going to alt left click on these circle corners. So I'm going to drag this down, and I'm going to crop off that top part. I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. So I'm actually going towards the middle parts, not the corners, because I only want to adjust one side at a time. And once you have all sides cropped, you can basically move this around as your webcam capture. You can scale it down by left clicking on the corner and dragging it inward. And then you just need to put whatever else you need in the background. If you have a green screen, you can chroma key it out. If you have a game to put in as another source, go for it. But yeah, as you can see, phone working as a decent webcam alternative, as well as a microphone. So pretty cool. I hope you guys found this tutorial helpful, and I will see you guys in my future video content.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how we can take your Android phone and use it as a video webcam inside of OBS so that you can use it while you're recording other videos on your computer. So in order to do this, we need an app called AirDroid, and you can download it on your phone, and you should also download it on your computer. You can pick it up from airdroid.com, and I believe the Android app is also in the Google Play Store, so it should be very easy to find if you download and install AirDroid. And how it basically works is that through the app, your devices will be able to talk to each other on your Wi-Fi network. So if you have a phone that's connected to your Wi-Fi and your computer's connected to your Wi-Fi, you'll be able to access the phone's camera from within the AirDroid app. So as you can see here on the Windows app version of AirDroid, we can see that my devices includes two Redmi Note 4 phones that we can access and use. Now currently, neither of these devices are connected. You can tell because it's grayed out for being offline, which means that on our Android devices, we should go ahead and open the AirDroid app. And once you've done that, you don't have to sign in or anything. It just needs to be connected to your Wi-Fi. You should see one of your devices pop up here with a blue icon instead of a gray one. And that means that it's actually accessible. So we can click on this and do things like file transfer. But more importantly, we can go over to Air Mirror, which is the mode that will allow us to do this function, access camera from desktop, remote camera. So as long as your device is connected here with the blue icon, we can click on remote camera, and that is going to connect our desktop AirDroid to our phone AirDroid. And after a few moments, the camera should pop up there. So you can see here, I am aiming my camera at the computer screen there. So you can decide where you want to point your camera. But in order to use this inside of OBS, we're going to need to actually go ahead and hit this pop-up button in the top right-hand corner on the desktop. So I'm going to do that here. And we'll pop this up into its own separate window and minimize the rest of AirDroid. Now we can open up another copy of OBS. So with the copy of OBS opened, we can see here that the desktop display already includes the remote camera, but we want this to be a separate window, which is manipulatable. So I'm actually going to turn off display capture there, and I'm going to add in a new video source. So this is going to be a window capture, and I guess I will call it phone. Hit enter, and now from window, we're going to select AirDroid Air Mirror. So that pops in over there, and this now is a window that only has the camera there. Now we can stretch this if we want. One thing you'll probably want to do is cut off this top area where it says remote camera and the bottom, so we don't really want to see the controls in the final video. So let me set the phone down there for a moment. And you can see that when I set it down, because I tilted it on its side, that the orientation automatically switches. So make sure it's in the orientation you want. But once you've done that, you can hold Alt down and left click to crop away the sides that you don't actually need here. So I'm going to crop that top part, and I'm going to adjust the bottom part as well. So I'm holding Alt down and left clicking in order to crop part of the window. And now I can drag what remains where I need it, and I can stretch it to the size I need. So now that we have the camera working as a webcam, we can add in whatever other kind of captures we need. So if you're doing a presentation, it might be something like add a second window capture and then have that be behind the phone so that the phone shows on top, or add game capture if you're recording a game. But either way, that's the basics of how you can use AirDroid to set up your phone as a working webcam that you can integrate into OBS while you're recording things on your computer. So I hope this video has helped some of you guys out. Thanks for watching. I've been Chris, and I will see you guys in my future video content.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I wanted to show you guys some settings you can add to DaVinci Resolve and to OBS so that when you record in OBS game footage or whatever else you're recording, that the footage you import into DaVinci Resolve 15 should work and play back correctly. In this case, we'll also be adding in multiple audio tracks. So if you want to separate your game audio from your microphone audio, you can do that and put them on separate tracks. So first, let's get started by talking about the settings in DaVinci Resolve 15. If you want to customize them, you need to go up to the File menu and then Project Settings. Master Settings is going to be where everything you need is set here. So you're going to see the timeline frame rate and the playback frame rate. Generally, I'm going to keep these equal. If you record or you want to record in 60 frames per second, then you can set these both to 60 frames per second, obviously. 30 frames per second is also really common for YouTube. So whatever you're going to set in OBS would be a good idea to set up here. If you're also recording in 1080 resolution, then you can come down here and choose the default video format. By default, it actually is set to 59.94, but I would make that either HD 1080p 30, meaning 30 FPS, or 60 for 60 FPS. If for some reason you are recording in a lower format, there's also HD 720p 30 or HD 720p 60 over here. But for most people, I think in this age, it's going to be one of these two. Now, one thing to note is that the timeline frame rate, as you can see here, is actually grayed out for me because this is in a new project where files have already been added to the timeline. So in order to customize this, a really easy way would be to start a new project, and then you'll be able to click on the drop down and make this 60 frames per second. So make sure you go ahead and do that. And in order to make all of these settings come back every time we create a new project, what we can do is go over to presets, and you'll see current project. We're going to want to save those settings here. And then we can right click current project and hit save as user default configuration, which means all these changes we've made in the master settings will be the defaults that we load into the timeline for DaVinci Resolve. So with that now, we can actually go over to OBS. So inside of OBS, we're going to need to customize a few extra settings. So let's get started with the audio. Assuming you have a microphone plugged in, you should see microphone auxiliary somewhere over here in the mixer, and then desktop audio should be there as well. I'm going to click on one of these settings gears and go to advanced audio properties. And from there, we can set up which audio device corresponds with which audio tracks, and that'll be important in order to get audio separated into different tracks when we import those files into DaVinci Resolve. So for microphone auxiliary, I have that set to tracks 1 and 3. You could make it 1 and 2, and basically a reverse of what I have desktop audio 2 set to. But the idea is that the first track here is the audio track that's used for streaming if you're going to be streaming to Twitch or YouTube. Because when you are streaming, it only supports one audio track, so you want to merge all your audio into one track. But then for the actual recorded files, that's where tracks 2 and 3 come in. So just make sure on tracks 2 and 3 you have those separated. All the other extra tracks should be unchecked. So I had 6 there, but that didn't actually matter because I'm only recording tracks 2 and 3. So it should look something like that. And when you're done, go ahead and hit close. Now I'm going to go up to File Settings,
And we're going to want to go to the output tab here. So inside of output, streaming, you can see it's using audio track 1, the combined audio track. Encoder, I like to use NVEC H264. I have had no problems using that encoder. And then on the recording tab, we want the recording format to be .mov. So there's a few formats that actually support multiple audio tracks. MP4 is one of them. The problem with MP4 directly, though, is that if you are recording in MP4 and for some reason the recording crashes, you can lose all of the data. That's the warning there. So what OBS recommends you do is record in MKV and then convert that into MP4. But when I do that conversion to MP4 and I play that back in DaVinci Resolve, I've been getting issues. But with the .mov format, it's been playing back perfectly inside of DaVinci Resolve, so that's why I'm using .mov now. So for the recording tab, this is of course talking about the recorded files that we later want to edit. So audio tracks are going to be 2 and 3 here, not audio track 1, because 1 is reserved for the stream. And by the way, if you don't see all of these advanced settings, it's because I'm in advanced output mode, so change output mode from simple to advanced. Sorry I didn't mention that sooner. If you do run into any choppiness in your recording, it may be a good idea to increase the bitrate, allowing OBS to write more data to the file, so that if you're recording in like 60 FPS and a very flashy game with a lot of movement, that it doesn't lose any data. So keep the bitrate high enough. On the audio tab, I like to change the bitrate of all of the tracks to 192. It doesn't really make a huge difference, even if you had it as low as 128. And having a higher audio bitrate doesn't really add that much extra data to the video file anyway, so it's fine. And lastly, in the video tab down here, make sure your output scaled resolution is the resolution you actually want to release your video files at. So OBS by default takes the base resolution, which on my computer 1920 times 1080, and scales that down to 720p resolution like that. But if you actually want your video file to be 1080p resolution, your output scaled resolution should be the same. And then with this FPS drop-down menu, you should drop that to whatever FPS you want to record at. So if you are setting DaVinci Resolve up to be 60, this should be 60. If you're setting DaVinci Resolve up to be 30 FPS, then you can do it at 30 FPS. The reason I had it at 59.94 earlier is that is the default in DaVinci Resolve, but both programs support all 3 of these FPS values, so you can choose whichever one you like, but generally I think people like 30 and 60. So just set that there and go ahead and hit apply. Okay, so what we've gone ahead and done now is separated our desktop audio, our microphone tracks, into different audio tracks for editing. Very helpful when we need to edit those audio sources independently. We've set the FPS values in both programs to match. Ideally, we've set the resolution to be what we want as well, so OBS shouldn't be scaling down the resolution either. And because we're recording in .mov now, we shouldn't run into any issues importing and editing those files in DaVinci Resolve. At least it's been working really good for me so far. And of course, we've saved the new settings so that it will load that for every DaVinci Resolve project. So hopefully with those changes I talked about in the video, you guys will be able to get OBS recorded files to play back and edit well inside of DaVinci Resolve. I've been Chris, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in my future video content.
Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to change the FPS output value inside of OBS so that you can record at 60 frames per second or however many frames per second you want to record at. So in order to do this, open up OBS, go to File, Settings, and in this dialog box you have a bunch of tabs. The one we care about is Video. So click on Video, and then at the bottom here you have common FPS values. You can click on this, which is 30 by default, and set it to whatever FPS value you want to. So if you want it to be 60, just click 60, hit apply. If you want to set your own FPS value, you can click on this drop down to the left and set an integer or fractional FPS value. So integer would be any number without a decimal point, so you could set it to like 120 there, and then that would be 120 FPS. And with fractional FPS value, you take the numerator and you divide it by the denominator. So you could get 60 FPS by doing 120 divided by 2. But it would also allow you to get weird in-between numbers, like 121 divided by 2 would be 60.5 FPS. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you can. So yeah, the easiest thing to do is just set the common FPS value to 60. Hope that gets you guys going there, and you know everything you want to know about FPS and OBS now. So I will see you guys in my future video content.